Chapter 1362. It was the dragon of destruction that had risen to power in Su Ming's soul from his mother's race. It gathered together an extreme cold aura, causing the power of the light of extreme darkness to become several times stronger. It surrounded Su Ming and turned into the origin of the light of extreme darkness. The dragon of destruction roared. Booming sounds surged into the air at that instant. They did not stop, and each sound was more shocking than the last. In just the span of a few breaths, the palm formed by the five colors looked as if it could no longer hold on. More black light spread out from the gaps between its fingers. In an instant, as the black light spilled out, the palm looked as if it was covered in endless light of extreme darkness. The illusion of the dragon of destruction manifested in it, and it rushed forward. The light of extreme darkness looked as if it possessed intelligence. It spread out from the gaps between the palm's fingers, as if it had turned Su Ming's body from a corporeal form to an illusion that had fused with the light of extreme darkness. A large amount of light spread out from the gaps between his fingers and gathered together in midair to turn into a huge and ferocious dragon of destruction. Once the dragon appeared, it threw its head back and roared. Its voice was like thunder, and it seemed to contain the might of heaven. A brilliant light shone in its eyes when it looked at the palm formed by the five colors. The big hand slowly loosened, and when the palm was empty, it lifted up and grabbed at the dragon of destruction again. This time, the five fingers turned into five faces, and they were even clearer. Power to overturn the ocean, scatter the light of extreme darkness, destroy the dragon of destruction's frozen tomb. A freezing glare shone in the eyes of the dragon of destruction that was Su Ming. As he mumbled, the light of extreme darkness spread out from the dragon of destruction's body. This was the transformation of his divine ability that Su Ming had figured out when he was alone. His divine abilities were the god of Berserker's transformation that could move mountains and overturn oceans, the god of Berserker's transformation, and the first curse of Arid Triad. When a mountain shifter fused with the end of Will's sword, it could attract 300 million mountain souls to form a mighty art. This was the end of Mountain Shifter's Will's sword. The Ocean Remover art was originally a manifestation of the light of extreme darkness. When it fused with the dragon of destruction in Su Ming's soul, its might increased by several fold, but it still could not compare to the Mountain Shifter that could gather 300 million mountain souls, which was why the art did not have a supreme treasure like the end of Will's sword. However, the ring's existence allowed Su Ming to use it in his Ocean Remover art. Because of it, his Ocean Remover divine ability could reach a terrifying level of might. Next was the god of Berserker's transformation. There was no need for Su Ming to study this art. The first and second styles of the god of Berserker's transformation were meant to make Su Ming stronger with his arts and divine abilities, while he was in the god of Berserker's transformation. At that moment, when he saw the five-colored hand charging towards him, a vast, mighty pressure that seemed to be able to destroy all lives spread out from it. It instantly closed in on the dragon of destruction that was Su Ming. At the instant it seized him, the dragon of destruction let out a low roar. With the light of extreme darkness that was like an ocean around him, he did not retreat. Instead, he moved forward and charged toward the hand. The two of them instantly closed in on each other. When they touched each other, the hand spread open to seize the dragon of destruction. At that instant, Su Ming, who was the dragon of destruction, swung his body. His tail spun in the air, as if he wanted to envelop the five fingers of the hand and use his body to turn into a rope to bind them. During that instant, the dragon's tail spread out endlessly. When it touched the dragon's head, the dragon of destruction's body turned into a circle, and at the instant it enveloped the hand within, freezing abyss dragon destruction ring. Kill. When Su Ming mumbled, the presence of a supreme treasure swiftly appeared on the ring-shaped dragon of destruction's body. It was the ring, a supreme treasure in Avicania realm that Su Ming had snatched from Saint Defire Expanse Cosmos. All of this might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but in truth, it happened in an instant. At the instant the supreme treasure appeared, it immediately swelled up, as if it had fused with Su Ming's dragon of destruction. When it appeared, the dragon of destruction's body swiftly shrank. The ring also shrank, and in an instant it bound the 5 fingers of the 5-colored hand together. With a bang, Su Ming fused with the dragon of destruction's body into the ring. Not only did he bind the 5 fingers together, he also swiftly shrank in an attempt to seal the hand. This was Su Ming turning from a passive stance to an active stance. This was Su Ming baring his fangs. He did not want to face the disaster passively. He wanted to take the initiative to attack and destroy the disaster. From the distance, Su Ming looked as if he had turned into a ring. The 5 fingers of the hand were bound tightly by the ring, and when it shrank, he wanted to break the hand's fingers. Booming sounds reverberated in the air. As the dragon of destruction formed by Su Ming and the ring shrank, the 5 fingers on the 5-colored hand started trembling, and the spots where the seals had been placed on them swiftly sank in. However, a powerful rebound was continuously bouncing back. The fingers of the 5-colored hand shone swiftly, and the light became dull. Clearly, Su Ming's counterattack was something that even the disaster would find difficult to break free from for a period of time. Boom! The index finger was the first to shatter. Once it was forcefully broken, the face of the woman on it contorted, and with a sigh filled with unwillingness to admit defeat, it disappeared without a trace. Soon after, the little finger that represented the child's face also shattered as booming sounds reverberated in the air. When the first finger shattered, Su Ming's spirits lifted, but when the second finger shattered, the eyes of the dragon of destruction shrank slightly. Su Ming might be confident, but he was not arrogant enough to believe that his divine ability was strong enough to force back the second disaster of an antecedental spirit. His original intention was to continuously weaken the hand as it struggled, just like how he had dealt with the first disaster. When the hand was weakened to its limit, he would deliver a fatal strike. But by the looks of it, the 5-colored hand had actually crumbled on its own. At that moment, the finger that represented the pink face also crumbled under Su Ming's dragon of destruction ring. Then, the thumb that represented the crane face and the middle finger that represented the dragon face also crumbled, causing the ring that was Su Ming to shrink to its limit. When the dragon of destruction he had turned into and the ring had shrunk to its limit, the 5 fingers that had disappeared looked as if they were floating on the palm that had no fingers. Suddenly, the air where the 5 fingers were supposed to be distorted, and they reappeared at the same time. It was as if the 5 fingers had just crumbled was just an illusion. If it was not because the fingers that had reappeared were much duller, Su Ming would have definitely thought that his plan to weaken the hand had failed. What a troublesome second disaster! Su Ming sighed in his heart. When the 5 fingers reappeared, the 5-colored hand swiftly closed its fingers together and clenched them into a fist, intending to seize Su Ming. When Su Ming sighed in his heart, the dragon of destruction gathered together. When black light shone, his body appeared. He stared at the 5 fingers charging at him from all directions, and determination appeared on his face. He gave up on the methods he had prepared in his plan, because he realized that even if he used all of them, it would be impossible for him to cause the 5-colored hand to have the effect he wanted. If that was the case, Su Ming might as well use the methods he had prepared to fight against the third disaster and the second disaster. God of Berserker's transformation. At the instant the hand charged at Su Ming and covered the entire area around him, intending to seize him, a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand and swung it. Immediately, 100 million something souls from Great Berserker tribe charged out. Some of them gathered on Su Ming's right hand, causing it to swell endlessly. A power that could destroy the sky and earth erupted from Su Ming's right arm. As he swung his left arm, it swelled up in the exact same manner as his right arm. Countless souls from Great Berserker tribe fused into it, and Su Ming's body swelled up violently with a bang. Then it was followed by his legs. At the instant all of this was done, Su Ming turned from a normal person to a giant that was 100-something feet tall and looked like a mountain. His body was filled with power, and great confidence shone in his eyes. A presence that was as great as a rainbow erupted from his body. It was the presence of the god of berserkers. His body was the strongest body in the berserkers, and he also possessed the will of a true world. That will was revealed in the third eye at the center of his brow. At that moment, it was activated and a slit appeared. At that moment, Su Ming, he was the ancient god of the berserkers. He could fight against the heavens, the earth, and all directions. This was the strongest manifestation of the will of an antecedental spirit. The moment Su Ming executed the god of berserkers transformation, the 5 fingers of the hand were already less than hundreds of feet away from him. They covered the entire area and all directions for Su Ming, causing him to be unable to dodge. However, Su Ming never thought about dodging it. Fighting spirit appeared in his eyes. At the instant the fingers descended, he let out a low roar. He leaped up, lifted his arms, and pushed them against the index finger of the descending hand. At the instant they touched each other, booming sounds surged into the sky. The index finger shuddered violently, but it could not descend. Once it was pressed down by Su Ming, who was in the god of berserkers transformation, he let out a low roar and clenched his right hand into a fist before throwing a punch at the index finger. The index finger shuddered and bounced up under Su Ming's punch, causing Su Ming to fly up from it even though the other 4 fingers had already clenched into a fist. He did not leave. Instead, once he flew out, he turned around, clenched his fists, and turned into a long arc that charged towards the clenched hand. Great Berserker tribe has existed for hundreds of thousands of years and countless Berserker souls. Today, I will go through my disaster. Are all of you willing to lend me a hand? An endless amount of shadows seemed to appear in the air around the long arc that was Su Ming. Those shadows were indistinct, and if anyone did not look closely, they would not be able to see them clearly. In fact, even if they did, they would feel as if they were hallucinating. Perhaps they existed, but perhaps they did not. Su Ming's god of berserkers instantly closed in on the clenched fist. At the instant they crashed into each other, booming sounds stirred up all of Death Vortex. They spread through all the worlds and beyond. When the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe saw this, a powerful light shone in his eyes. In the mid of the booming sounds, the 5 faces on the hand distorted violently. The index finger was the first to crumble, followed by the little finger, ring finger, thumb, and middle finger. Finally, the palm. All of them crumbled together under the effect of Su Ming's god of berserkers transformation and the increase in his level of cultivation. The second disaster shattered. Su Ming fell back and coughed up a mouthful of blood, but his face was still filled with fighting spirit. His life tumbled about in his body, and his will roared like a raging wolf in the sea. He sensed a powerful will to reach a breakthrough once more, and it rose clearly in his heart. I can already go through my second spirit ascension. If I can reach a breakthrough now, I can go through my spirit ascension twice in a row and reach the 3rd stage. On the way, when he reached home, he would arrive at the 2nd stage. Chapter 1363. In front of Su Ming was a path leading to the heavens. He could see light, the future, and hope on that path. It was the path of 9 spirit ascensions. With 3 spirit ascensions, he could be equivalent to those in Avacania realm. With 6 spirit ascensions, he could be invincible among those in Avacania realm. With 9 spirit ascensions, he could step out of arid triad expanse, cosmos, 2nd aeon. Since the 2nd aeon's era, countless lives in arid triad expanse cosmos had longed for it, but none of them had managed to defeat it. Ancestral spirits. Once a person ascended 9 times, it would mean that they stood at the peak of the 2nd aeon. There would no longer be any form of life that could threaten them, because ancestral spirits had the same lifespan as the universe. In fact, to a certain degree, they had already become a part of each other. The path Su Ming took was originally not the path of an antecedental spirit. Due to all sorts of coincidences, he had become an antecedental spirit. When he possessed true morning Tao world and became a true world's will, it could be said that at that moment, Even Su Ming himself did not realize that he already possessed a relatively limitless life. There was no end to his life. His existence would become eternal. Unless the true world was completely destroyed, its will wiped off, and even Su Ming's body and soul were destroyed, he would never die again. This caused Su Ming to become an incredibly unique existence even in the first Aeon, the era of the ancestral spirits. He was an antecedental spirit, but he was also one of the four great true worlds under Arid Triad's will. He had a strange connection with Arid Triad's will, and even the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe could only scratch the surface of this connection. It was difficult for him to see the details, because this was something only ancestral spirits possessed. But Su Ming could. It was precisely because of these things that Su Ming slowly came to understand after he became an antecedental spirit and possessed a true world that he longed for a few spirit ascensions. He longed to succeed in his 9 spirit ascensions at the fastest speed possible and take that legendary step into that indescribable realm. But even though Su Ming longed for it, it was not something he could obtain just because he wanted to. He needed to reach a breakthrough in his state of life, his will, and even his mind. Only when he reached a sufficient level of attainment would he have the foundation for his next spirit ascension. That was why even though Su Ming had been paying attention to it previously, he knew that he could not be anxious about it. Yet now, when he sensed his will, and even his state of being boiling, and sensed that he was about to go through his second spirit ascension, even his third spirit ascension was right before his eyes, great greed rose in Su Ming's heart. Riches came from danger. This was a saying that had existed since ancient times. At that moment, everything Su Ming did was proof of this saying. The heavenly spirit is around in this disaster, so the possibility of me dying isn't high, but I still have to be prepared and be on guard. No matter what, if I can rush out of Death region, I will immediately enter All Spirits Hall and have my spirit ascend. If I can have my spirit ascend 2 times in a row and reach the third, then The desire in Su Ming's eyes grew stronger than it had ever been. The legacy of All Spirits Hall was right before his eyes, but no one dared to take it when they saw it because there was no number for it. Su Ming had that number, but he did not have the right. This matter had caused him to hesitate for a long time before he gritted his teeth and left resolutely, forcing himself to stop thinking about the mysteries of All Spirits Hall. Yet now, Su Ming saw hope. At that moment, while in the God of Berserker's transformation, he threw his head back and roared. A monstrous light shone in his eyes. In the slightly dark death vortex, Su Ming's eyes were like 2 bright lamps. The flames burned his life and shone with the light of hope. The third disaster, hurry up and descend. When Su Ming lifted his head, light shone in his eyes, and he became incredibly eye-catching in death vortex. As he leaped up, a presence that was increasingly like a rainbow erupted from his body. It filled the area around him, and for the first time, it gathered together to turn into a whirlwind vortex. This scene was similar to that of the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, but the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe had relied on his great power to turn his presence into a vortex, which made it seem like the second vortex in death vortex. However, Su Ming's level of cultivation could not compare to that of the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, but he was incredibly unique. He had a true world clone, the first arid curse that could shake those in Avacania realm and awaken arid triads, wolf from its slumber. He had also gotten through the first and second disasters on his own, and all the bizarre changes that had happened in the depths of death vortex, which was why for the first time, Su Ming's presence turned into a vortex from its original state of being in a volatile state. The vortex swept up with loud rumbles and became the third vortex in death vortex. When the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe saw this, his pupils shrank, and a strange light appeared on his face. The difference in form might not seem like much, since it was just a volatile state and a vortex. But in truth, this was an ability that could only be obtained after a person had their spirit ascend 3 times. When Su Ming's presence turned into a vortex, the light in the old man's eyes shone brilliantly. He lifted his right hand and formed a seal in front of him. His lips moved slightly, as if he was calculating something, because he saw that there seemed to be some sort of strange and enchanting object in the vortex Su Ming had swept up, but it was indistinct, and he could not see it clearly. He could only see that it seemed to have wings. All of this might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but in truth, only the span of a few breaths had passed since the second disaster was destroyed. Almost at the instant Su Ming's god of Berserker's transformation body swept up his presence and formed the third vortex in Yin Death region. A flickering light appeared above Yin Death vortex. The flickering light could not be seen clearly. Only light and darkness could be seen intersecting with each other non-stop, as if it would last for an eternity. At the same time, Arid Triad roared beyond Yin Death vortex. Light intersected with each other, as if all of Arid Triad had been placed in a house. The oil lamps in the house were extinguished and lit, and it was difficult for them to overlap. This was how Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos looked at that moment. After the five-colored lightning will definitely be the legendary 6 flash disaster. The first flash will take 100,000 years, and the second will take 1 million years. The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe lifted his head and stared at the vortex. His expression became even more solemn. By the looks of it, could it be that Su Ming's first antecedent spirits disaster isn't 3? When he thought of this, the old man's expression changed swiftly. At that moment, as booming sounds reverberated above Yin Death vortex, the flickering light and darkness, the flickering light and darkness, and the flickering light and darkness made it look like a picture. It was spreading downwards, as if there was a ferocious beast from ancient times hidden in the flickering light and darkness. At that moment, it had its mouth wide open, and with brutality and madness, it charged towards Su Ming with a howl. I just got home, and I'm late for updating. Everyone, please forgive me. Please vote for me. Chapter 1364. One Flash, 100,000 Years. This was the 6th flash disaster of the 3rd disaster of the antecedent spirits. The power of this disaster could shake all manner of lives, and all lives would eventually come to an end. Even antecedent spirits might seem to have endless lifespans, but unless they went through 9 spirit ascensions and became ancestral spirits, they would eventually reach the end of their lifespans. The disaster did not seem powerful, but it was dominated by the power of time. It turned time into a millstone and reduced all lives to ashes. Even the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe believed that even if he could get through it, he would need to use up too much of his essence. In fact, he did not dare to have all 6 flashes descend. He had to search for the path of the disaster before the 3rd flash and use all his power to crash into the invisible root of the disaster. This was the method he would choose with his level of cultivation to forcefully break the disaster. But the method he chose was built on the foundation of his 8 antecedent spirits. He had the right to do it, and he could indeed do it, but if it were anyone else, there were very few people who could forcefully break the momentum of the disaster like the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, which is why they could only face it. However, almost all those who faced the 6 flash disaster were reduced to ashes in the passage of time. After all, there was no life who could perfectly go through 6 flashes of life. After all, while the first flash would only lose 100,000 years of life, the second would lose 1 million years, and the third would lose 10 million years. These numbers might sound like numbers, but there was no life who could be confident that they could live for more than 100,000 years, much less 1 million, 10 million, or even 100 million years for the 4th flash. As for the 5th flash, not even the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe dared to touch it. It was a disappearance of 1 billion years, and his lifespan was nowhere near enough. Once the 5th flash appeared, he would immediately be reduced to ashes, and the final 6th flash would be 10 billion years. No one knew how long an expanse cosmos could live. Perhaps it would be more than 10 billion years, but perhaps it was less than 10 billion years, which was why the 6th flash and even the 5th flash had never descended during the antecedent spirits disaster. Those who could get through the disaster were like the old man from Heavenly Spirit tribe. They would forcefully break the disaster before the third flash, and those who could not would turn into dust in the passage of time during the third flash, or at most, the fourth flash. However, when Su Ming saw the sixth flash disaster and heard the old man's voice from Heavenly Spirit tribe, a glint suddenly appeared in his eyes, and a profound smile appeared on his lips. If it had been any other disaster, it would have been even more difficult for Su Ming to handle it. He could already imagine that if it had been any other disaster, the appearance of the third disaster would have definitely been like a bolt of lightning, and Su Ming did not have much confidence in getting through it. But the third disaster was the six flashes, which was controlled by the power of time. Even though Su Ming's soul from Great Berserker tribe and his blood from Great Abyss tribe could not get through the six flashes of time, he had a clone, and it was a true world. It was a part of arid triad expanse cosmos. Su Ming did not know how long a true world had, but he did know that if there were truly people in the world who could freely allow the six flash disaster to descend, then he was definitely one of them. Unless the disaster could destroy a true world's lifespan, Su Ming would definitely not be reduced to ashes. Once he came to understand the six flash disaster, Su Ming immediately canceled his god of Berserker's transformation. Once his body returned to normal, he reserved some time to continue using the god of Berserker's transformation. While standing in Een Death Vortex, he lifted his head and stared at the area above him with an aloof gaze. In Su Ming's eyes, Een Death Vortex shone with both light and darkness, as if a ferocious beast from ancient times was swiftly descending. In just the span of a few breaths, the light instantly closed in on Su Ming. At the same time it closed in on him, the first flash of the sixth flash disaster descended. The entire Een Death Vortex instantly lit up. The light was so bright that it was piercing to the eyes and practically covered Een Death Vortex. Only the deepest part of the vortex was the abyss that light could not penetrate. However, Su Ming was surrounded by a powerful light. That light only lasted for the span of a few breaths before murmurs filled the air. There was an ancient tone to them, as if they had traveled with time. The entire world, all of Arid Triad, and all of Een Death Vortex was instantly covered in darkness. As light and darkness intersected with each other, Su Ming immediately sensed that he seemed to have lost something in his body. What he lost was his life force, and a person's essence, energy, and spirit. It was the first flash that could make a mortal die an unknown number of times in an instant and could kill most cultivators. But at that moment, Su Ming sensed that the life force he lost was just a drop in the ocean compared to the vast life force contained in his true world clone. Is that all? A hint of derision appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. He stared at the six flash disaster, which was intersecting with each other between light and darkness. He did not fight against it, because his endless lifespan was his best defense. Su Ming had a lot of lifespan. If you truly have the ability to absorb all of it, you can descend, but if this is all you can do, then don't use this disaster a second time in front of me. Su Ming swung his arm, and his presence surged like a tidal wave. As his hair danced in the air, a look of disdain appeared on his face. Boom! Arid Triad shuddered. As the light and darkness intersected with each other, Een Death Vortex immediately shone with light, as if Su Ming's provocation had stirred up some sort of will's anger. Almost at the instant Su Ming finished speaking, the second flash of the six flash disaster descended with a bang. The entire world clearly alternated between light and darkness for a longer period of time. When it turned black again, it looked as if Su Ming's body had fused into it. The world of light looked as if it was scattering Su Ming's life force. The darkness looked as if it had turned into a black scythe of death that cut down Su Ming's body in an unseen manner, taking away 1 million of his life force. Su Ming's face instantly turned pale, but he immediately returned to normal. The vast life force from his true world clone did not care about the loss of his life force. 100,000 was just a drop in the ocean, and 1 million was at most just a drop in the ocean. A derisive smile appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. He simply allowed the six-flash disaster to descend on him, as if it was just rain. No matter how heavy the rain was, it could not affect his body. He swung his arm and laughed long and hard. He sensed the will to reach a breakthrough in his body becoming stronger, and as he laughed, Su Ming's arrogant and domineering words traveled out. The six-flash disaster is only SOSO. Do you dare come again? Su Ming lifted his head, and a brilliant light that surged into the heavens shone in his eyes. As his aura reverberated in the air, the whirlwind that was formed roared. This scene caused the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe to stare at Su Ming for a long time. For some unknown reason, when he saw Su Ming at that moment, for words rose in his head. He has already grown strong. Booming sounds shook the heavens. The six-flash disaster in the realm of light and darkness shone brightly, and the third flash descended. However, it was not just the third flash. The fourth flash also charged forward with a howl. The 3 and 4 flashes came one after another. The power of time could wipe away 1 million years of life, and it could shake 10 million years of life. At that moment, when it descended together, it was like an invisible blade that sliced through Su Ming's body. Su Ming's face turned pale again. When he took 2 steps back, his face turned even paler, but it only lasted for an instant before he immediately recovered. 1 million years of life was equivalent to 10 hairs on an ox. Even 10 million years of life was just a hair on an ox. This sort of loss of life might not be completely harmless, but to a true world that had a vast amount of life, it was still something that could be withstood. When the third and fourth flashes charged forward, Su Ming's laughter was filled with excitement. He did not care about the loss of his life. With his true world clone, he did not know just how much life he had left. What he cared about was the breakthrough of his will. During that instant, he could clearly sense the booming sound in his head becoming several times stronger. As his aura rose, his will and state of being reached a state where he could withstand the third spirit ascension. This was Su Ming's greatest gain from the antecedental spirit's disaster. Right now, as long as I get out of Yin Death Vortex and enter All Spirits Hall again, I will be able to have my spirit ascend twice in a row, and I will become a powerful warrior equivalent to those in Avacania Realm. Avacania Realm. Avacania Realm. In the midst of Su Ming's excitement, a powerful light shone in his eyes. He longed to become stronger, because only when he was strong could he control his own fate and protect the people he wanted to protect. Fifth flash, do you dare come again? As Su Ming laughed long and hard, his presence became even stronger. The whirlwind that was formed swept in all directions with a howl. It grew to be 1,000 feet tall and looked as aggressive as a rainbow. The brightness and darkness of the world seemed to hesitate at that instant, but that hesitation only lasted for the span of a few breaths. Then the fifth flash, which had never appeared in this aeon, descended swiftly. When the fifth flash descended, it did not matter whether it was Arid Triad or Yin Death Vortex. The entire world roared in both darkness and light. The fifth flash was about to wipe off 1 billion years of life. This was incredibly terrifying to anyone, and even the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe did not dare to try it. But for Su Ming, as he laughed, he simply allowed the fifth flash to descend on him. He simply allowed his life to be wiped away, but only his face turned pale. To his true world clone, this was just a drop in the ocean. It was nothing. The sixth flash was the final flash of the sixth flash disaster. In fact, even if it was not in this aeon, even if it was in the many eons of Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos, the sixth flash had rarely appeared, and at that moment, it descended. 10 billion years of life gave off an ancient air that could not be described with just a few words. Perhaps only an existence like Su Ming, who had possessed an entire true world, could still laugh long and hard under the sixth flash. A drop in the ocean. There would definitely be quite a lot of it, and it would definitely surpass 10,000, but in truth, it would at most be 100,000. It would be difficult for it to be more than that, which was why when Su Ming faced the sixth flash, It wiped away 1/10 of his true world's life. This wipe caused blood to trickle out of the corners of Su Ming's mouth as his face turned pale, but that was all. Red appeared in his eyes, but his laughter did not disappear. He stood tall in death vortex, and his laughter echoed in the air. He had gone through the third disaster, and it could even be said that he had perfectly cleared it. Chapter 1365. Why isn't there a seventh flash? Since ancient times, the ancestral spirits mentioned that there is a disaster known as the 6 flashes. This disaster will only flash 6 times, and definitely not more. But why is that? The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe stared at the 6 flashes disaster gradually disappearing from death vortex, and this thought suddenly appeared in his head. Su Ming, how much of your true world's life do you have left? The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe suddenly asked. There was a hint of excitement in his voice, as if he had noticed some sort of secret. In midair, Su Ming watched the 6 flash disaster disappear. In truth, the same question appeared in his head. Even though he did not know as much as the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, he had personally sensed it and knew clearly that if there was a 7th flash, then even if he had a true world clone, his life would come to an end. His true world would wither and die, and Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos would only have 3 true worlds left. That was why once the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe spoke, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. When he looked at the old man, he spoke slowly. 9/10. Su Ming did not hide too much from the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, and there was no need for him to either. If the old man wanted to know, he would definitely have a way to do so. 9/10. 9/10. If there is a 7th flash, then even a true world will not be able to live peacefully under this disaster. The true world will also wither away. That's why. It's not that there is no 7th flash, but that there cannot be one. As the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe mumbled, a brilliant light shone in his eyes. The will that descends on the antecedental spirit's disaster can ignore the lives and deaths of all lives. It can ignore the changes in the universe, but it cares so much about whether the true world will wither away. This is just as I expected. The one who descends on the antecedental spirit's disaster is not someone else. It is Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos will. That's it. It is the disaster. It is sleeping. When it sleeps, its will is the antecedental spirit's disaster. It will not allow any antecedental spirits to exist, which is why it wants to turn into a disaster to wipe them off. As for the sealed antecedental spirits, perhaps they have something it needs, and they're being controlled like livestock. And it wants to wipe off the antecedental spirits because the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe had an excited expression on his face. This was the first time he told Su Ming his guess. When he said those words, he paused for a moment, but Su Ming continued. It's because it wants to prevent others from possessing it, because only those who become antecedental spirits have a right to possess Arid Triad's will. Su Ming's heart trembled, and he said slowly, "That's right, that's it." The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe became even more excited. His breathing even quickened slightly, but it was not because his willpower was not strong enough. With his level of cultivation, there were very few things in the world that could make him so excited. If there was truly something that could make him so excited, then it would be the antecedental spirit's disaster and Arid Triad's will. When it sleeps, it wants to wipe off the antecedental spirits, but it also wants to seal them. This means that while it wants to kill the danger, it also needs some antecedental spirits to provide it with some sort of help. Then what happens when it wakes up? Su Ming suddenly asked. After it wakes up, the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe fell silent, but a hint of fear appeared in his eyes. It allowed Su Ming to immediately understand what the old man did not say. He thought of the memories he had obtained during his first spirit ascension. Before their era, at the end of another era, there was an old man in white robes who looked at the sky and said those 4 words. "It's here." Su Ming's pupil shrank. Besides saying those words, the old man had also said that if he was given more time, he would be able to reach a certain realm. These words had always existed in Su Ming's heart, causing him to be unable to find any clues as to what was going on. Yet when he heard the old man's words, a guess suddenly appeared in Su Ming's mind. When arid triads will fell asleep, to prevent itself from being possessed, it wiped off the antecedental spirits. When it wakes up, it wants to destroy all of arid triad expanse cosmos so that there will no longer be any lives or civilization in it, so that arid triad expanse cosmos can have a new beginning. Why did it do this? Based on the old man's words, could it be that once arid triads woke up, it turned into the arid disaster and destroyed everything to search for a life that could reach a certain realm in this aeon? Over countless eons, it continued searching and destroying, but perhaps it never found that person. Su Ming's heart trembled. He looked at the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, but he did not voice his guess. Instead, another question rose in his heart. Why is arid triads weakened in this place? Su Ming asked slowly. Before I came here, I had always been thinking about it. All forms of life in the world have their mortal enemies. It's impossible for them to live forever, and it's the same for the arid disaster. But I couldn't find the mortal enemy of arid triads' will. When I came here, I could clearly sense that there was something different about this place, especially in the depths of Death Vortex. I could sense that there's also a will there, but that will wasn't asleep. It had shattered. In fact, I could even sense the remnants of that will on you. That will could make my heart feel an unprecedented calmness. But even so, I didn't think too much about it. Even if the three ancient existences who called themselves servants of Morris Alba made that feeling become even stronger, I still didn't think too much about it. Only, at the instant you brought the entire land of berserkers out of Death Vortex and your antecedental spirit's disaster descended, did I come to an understanding. Your antecedental spirit's disaster should have been brought forward, but because you were in Death Vortex, it didn't appear. At that time, I had a feeling that there was some sort of strange power contained in the shattered will in the depths of this place. When we returned to the vortex and the antecedental spirit's disaster descended, arid triad sank into an eternal state of stillness, but everything in Death Vortex remained the same. At that time, I came to an understanding. Perhaps the mortal enemy of arid triads' will is in this place. Excitement shone in the eyes of the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe. He stared at Su Ming, then at the depths of Death Vortex, which was as dark as an abyss. The secret in that place is not something I can pry into. The resistance there is so great that I tried before, but it was difficult for me to enter. Only you are different. The resistance you face is clearly much smaller, which is why I am certain that you have some sort of connection with the Shattered Will in that place. And only you can enter the true depths of Death Vortex and unravel the answer to this question. The old man's breathing quickened. When his words echoed in space, Su Ming's heart trembled. At that moment, loud booming sounds suddenly came from above Death Vortex again. As they reverberated in space, the fourth disaster of the antecedental spirit descended. As expected, there is a fourth disaster. If that's the case, then the antecedental spirit's disaster you need to go through is definitely not an ordinary disaster. Instead, it is a disaster from the three directions of heaven, earth, and man. The first three disasters are the man disaster, the middle three are the earthly disaster, and the final disaster is the heavenly disaster. And based on my understanding, once the earthly disaster appears, it will not appear one by one like the man disaster. Instead, three disasters will descend in one go. Only then can it be said to be the earthly disaster that surpasses the man disaster. As the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe spoke, he lifted his head and swung his arm. A brilliant light shone in his eyes. "Senior, do you know what the earthly disasters are?" Su Ming asked in a low voice while staring at the spot where the booming sounds came from above the vortex. The fourth disaster, the 9-death disaster. The fifth disaster, the 5 evils of Earth's withering. And the 6th disaster, the disaster of emptiness. These 3 disasters are no longer something you can fight against. They are disasters that can only be handled by those who have gone through 3 to 6 antecedent spirits. You can sense it first. If anything goes wrong, I will immediately help you get through it, the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe said slowly. If it was before, he might have attacked straight away, but now that Su Ming had become stronger, the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe wanted to help him. He wanted Su Ming to endure the disasters until he reached his limit. By doing so, it would be incredibly beneficial to his development in the future. The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe knew that this time, he might die in the disaster. It would be best if he did not die, but he had to be prepared to die. And Su Ming was the hope he had gathered together. One day, he would be able to fight against Triad. That was why the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe would not be stingy if he could make Su Ming grow faster. Su Ming, the number of disasters you can get through with your own power is the number of times you could try to have your spirit ascend without the disaster of an antecedental spirit descending on you. This chance is incredibly rare. You must bring out all your cultivation base and seize this serendipity within the disaster. The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe looked at Su Ming with encouragement and expectation in his eyes. His expression was incredibly sincere. This was the first time he showed such a sincere expression to Su Ming. When Su Ming saw it, he nodded. He knew that the old man was not lying. He had gone through 3 disasters, and he could indeed go through his 3rd spirit ascension. Logically speaking, if he could successfully get through the 4th disaster, he could go through his 4th spirit ascension. Almost at the instant Su Ming looked above the vortex, an indescribably great will descended from above death vortex with a loud bang. That will brought with it a domineering air as well as a supreme, awe-inspiring might. When it descended, it moved with an unstoppable force and chased away all the fog in the vortex. At the instant it descended, the will did not turn into corporeal form. It seemed to be intangible, but at the instant it filled death vortex, it filled the area around Su Ming. A murmur echoed in the will. It sounded like the murmurs of a person in their sleep. When it echoed in the air, it brought with it an indescribable presence. It was as if the words spoken by the voice contained some strange power that could make everything come true. Hands and feet turn green. These are the first words spoken by the voice. At the instant it echoed in Su Ming's ears, his hands and feet turned green. The second update is here, and there's still a 3rd update at night. Brothers and sisters who have recommendation votes, would you like to have some of them? Chapter 1366. The 9 Deaths Disaster is based on the concept of 9 deaths and 1 life. It will turn into 9 different signs of death and make a person suffer 9 different deaths. When this disaster descends, it has no form and no form, making it difficult for a person to fend against it and fight against it. The more you fight against it, the stronger the disaster will become. The only way to get out of this disaster is to rely on your will and search for that moment of life among the 9 deaths. The old man's words reached Su Ming's ears. His voice was solemn as it echoed in the air. Almost at the instant Su Ming heard the voice, his hands and feet turned emerald green. They swiftly darkened, and in the blink of an eye, they turned dark green. A numb feeling instantly rose in Su Ming's heart. It came from his body, and it directly affected his mind, causing him to instantly feel death descend upon him. If it was just his body, it would have been fine, but Su Ming had a strong feeling that he was not the only one affected. All of true Morning Tao world was affected at that instant, and it turned green. Die. Once the will that filled death vortex said that his hands and feet were green, it said this word. During that instant, intense pain shot through Su Ming's limbs. Waves of green light that looked like threads covered his entire body and went straight to his soul and mind. Wherever they went, the aura of death would become thick. Su Ming threw his head back and roared. His face contorted and green light shone faintly in it. His face was ferocious, and his will was swiftly fighting against the will of death that was growing in his body. The feeling of death swept through him like a wave, and Su Ming was like a lone boat in it. He was struggling to persevere. But before he could continue persevering for long, the wolf formed by the fourth disaster that filled Death Vortex let out a murmur again. Veins wither, teeth dry, die. A bang rang out in Su Ming's body, and all the veins in his body withered away at that instant, as if they had lost their life force and vitality. As they withered away, they looked like rivers withering away. His teeth also looked as if they had become loose, and his face instantly became much older. Blood trickled down the corners of his mouth, causing his expression to look forlorn. It was especially so for the last word. It was like a heavy hammer that struck Su Ming's body. When he staggered backwards, he coughed up a mouthful of black blood. His cultivation base was swiftly disappearing, and his body was swiftly weakening. The shadow of death grew larger until it completely enveloped Su Ming. When the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe saw this from not too far away, he sighed in his heart. He could tell that Su Ming had already reached his limit. He took a step forward, but just as he was about to help him, Su Ming lifted his head swiftly. His expression was ferocious, and his eyes were bloodshot. With great difficulty, he lifted his numb right hand and pushed it in the direction of the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, as if he wanted to stop him from moving forward. "I can do it," Su Ming said through gritted teeth. As he spoke, blood flowed out of his mouth, and a hint of resolution and madness appeared on his face. God of Berserkers. Transformation. At the instant Su Ming hissed through gritted teeth, the 100 million souls of Great Berserker Tribe immediately charged up and filled the area around him. They swiftly fused into his body, causing it to look as if it had been replenished, and he began to rapidly recover. However, at that moment, the murmur of the fourth tribulation could be heard once again. Voice, sound, scatter, man, die. Su Ming let out a shrill scream of pain. His god of Berserker's transformation showed signs of dispersing at that instant. The 100 million souls of Great Berserker Tribe seemed to be unable to restore Su Ming's body. His screams of pain sounded incredibly weak, as if he was about to die. Those who heard them would not be able to sense any signs of struggle. Instead, they would feel as if they were gasping for their last breaths and sighing before death. Even Su Ming's true morning Tao world withered at that instant, as if it was about to disappear from arid triad for all eternity. Nostrils, widen. Nostrils, die. Lips, cold. Xian, Lu, die. The continuous murmurs, the impact of the word death, and the curse of fate that seemed to be something the universe could not fight against appeared on Su Ming's body at that instant, causing his lips to turn purple. It was so cold that he felt as if he had lost all warmth, and his breathing seemed to slow down. His nostrils instinctively widened. Damn it, what kind of disaster is this? The madness in Su Ming's eyes grew stronger. He persisted in executing the god of Berserker's transformation, as if this was the only method that could allow his body to continuously recover. However, even the god of Berserker's transformation could not make Su Ming return to how he was before. In fact, it became even more useless. Su Ming's body was deteriorating to an incredibly serious degree. He was like a mortal who was about to die and was struggling before his death. At that moment, if he called out to the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, the old man would immediately attack. But Su Ming chose no. He did not believe that he could not fight against the fourth disaster. He did not believe that he could not die during the fourth disaster. He did not believe that he could not accept defeat. His pride would not allow him to fail like this. This isn't a disaster, it's a curse. Su Ming's entire body was in intense pain. His eyes were bloodshot, and a large amount of blood capillaries filled them. His gaze was dull, like a candle that was about to be extinguished at any moment when wind blew against it. But at the instant it was about to be extinguished, Su Ming came to a swift realization. The 9 deaths disaster could kill without a trace, and it was clearly a curse. The disaster was so strong that it made people feel powerless because all of Arid Triads was cursing a person. Because of that, that person could not fight against it and could only be cursed passively. This was a manifestation of arid triad's will. Su Ming understood it. Not only did he understand that the nine-death disaster was a curse, he also understood that the antecedental spirit's disaster was also a manifestation of arid triad's will. It was just like how if he used a true world's will to kill a cultivator in his true world, he could also use his will to descend on a similar disaster. Lips swollen, teeth burnt, die. At the instant Su Ming understood it, the murmurs from the will appeared again. This time, when they echoed in the air, Su Ming's face changed. His face swelled up, and he felt as if a hint of red had appeared in his loosened teeth, even though his body was clearly cold. This feeling was incredibly contradictory, as if he was facing the contradiction between life and death. However, at the instant this feeling appeared, Su Ming could clearly sense death approaching him in a manner that he could not fight against. His god of berserkers' transformation still persisted, but it was about to break down. So my clothes of a hand sweat out but not flow out die. With a bang, Su Ming's god of berserkers' transformation disintegrated. The 100 million souls of Great Berserker Realm could not gather together Su Ming's berserker body. They could not fight against the curse from arid triad's will. Isn't it just a curse? Curses. Su Ming knows them as well. Su Ming's entire body was weak, and he was about to die. At the instant the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe was about to help him without any hesitation, Su Ming laughed loudly. His laughter was incredibly weak and could not be heard. It could only echo soundlessly in the air, and the corners of Su Ming's lips curled up into an arc. As he laughed soundlessly, Su Ming coughed up a huge mouthful of blood. As he coughed up blood, murmurs tumbled out of Su Ming's mouth. His voice contained a strange power, and it immediately echoed in the area, stirring up Su Ming's true world clone. He was clearly using the power of his true world to curse arid triad. This was his strongest art, the arid curse divine ability. It was so strong that it could shake those in Avacania realm. But its true power was to curse arid triad's will, making it show signs of waking up even though it was in deep sleep. Roll your tongue and shrink, Vyong. 9-death disaster die. The final murmurs from the will of the 4th disaster, the 9-death disaster, spread through the area at that instant. They turned into thunderous roars that shook the sky and earth. At the instant death vortex shuddered, Su Ming fully executed his curse. Arid triad curse. Booming sounds surged into the sky at that instant. Su Ming's curse required a puppet, but at that moment, he did not have one. Then, he would use himself as a puppet. With the will of his true world clone, he would curse arid triad's will and the 4th disaster that had appeared in front of him. This was a fight between curses. It was also the strongest counterattack in Su Ming's life, which was the result of his desire to rise to power by placing himself in a land of death. During this counterattack, for the first time ever, he showed a madness and a threat to arid triads that he would never submit to him and could not be destroyed. Either, with my death, arid triad will wake up ahead of time, but because of the word wake up ahead of time, everything will not be perfect. Everything will not be in accordance with arid triad's will. Su Ming might not know what sort of changes would happen if he woke up ahead of time, but he believed that arid triads will have a spirit, and it would naturally not wish for that to happen. Or this disaster will crumble and disappear. Don't even think about trying to use the curse in front of me. This was Su Ming's blatant threat, and it was very direct and very thorough. Almost at the instant Su Ming executed his curse and crashed into the 9-death disaster in an invisible manner. A furious roar that sounded as if someone was sleeping echoed in the quiet, arid triad expanse cosmos. There was an indescribable, mighty pressure in that voice, and, as it echoed in the air, it filled all of arid triad expanse cosmos. If there were any lives that had woken up at that moment, they would definitely have their bodies and souls destroyed, no matter what level of cultivation they possessed. At the instant the voice appeared, the 9-death disaster around Su Ming disappeared without a trace. Once it disappeared, all the weakness from the curse in Su Ming's body disappeared. Everything returned to how it was before the disaster descended. At the same time, Su Ming's will reached a breakthrough with a bang, causing his presence to become even greater after it rose. The vortex he formed was thousands of feet big, and he could sense that he had gone through a cleansing. At that moment, he was confident that he could go through the fourth spirit ascension. The slumbering arid triads had compromised. At the instant a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes, the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe suddenly took a step forward and appeared in front of Su Ming. With a solemn expression, he lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the disappearing fourth disaster in the vortex. With it, the fourth disaster came to a swift halt. Next, I will go through your disaster. Your mission is to go into the depths of Death Vortex and verify my guesses. Go. My fellow Taoists, I won't talk about the third watch anymore. Tomorrow, we will continue. Chapter 1367. Su Ming's gaze landed on the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, then on the fourth disaster above Death Vortex, which the old man had seized through the air and prevented from disappearing. When he looked at it, Su Ming understood that in truth, he could no longer get through the third disaster. He had been able to get through it not because of how strong he was, but because he possessed a true world by pure coincidence. He had the life of a true world, which was why he could do as he pleased during the third disaster. The fourth disaster could be said to have left him with only a slim chance of survival. In the end, if his arid curse had not caused arid triads to choose to compromise while it was in deep sleep, Su Ming would have definitely died during the fourth disaster. Su Ming had absolutely no confidence in facing the fifth disaster in his current state. In truth, he had already used up all his strength during the second disaster. Su Ming might have wanted to go through the disaster himself, but he was not impulsive or foolish. If he did not have enough power and gambled, he would definitely lose, so he would not force himself to try. Since he had already reached his limit a long time ago, a glint appeared in his eyes. He remembered the words the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe had said regarding arid triads' will, and in silence, he took a swift step back. "Thank you, Senior," Su Ming said while wrapping his fist in his palm. "You don't have to thank me. I am the one who sought your disaster. Helping you is the same as helping myself." The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe swung his arm. When he lifted his head, Death Vortex immediately roared, and the fifth disaster came swiftly. It roared, and as it reverberated in space, it filled Death Vortex with countless lightning sparks swimming about, as if the huge vortex had turned into a lightning storm. The fifth disaster, the 5 evils of withering earth. I've long since heard that the power of this disaster can destroy all lives. Today, I'd like to see whether this 5 evils of withering earth can bury my will of an antecedental spirit. As the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe laughed long and hard. Before the fifth disaster closed in, he turned into a vortex that surged into the sky and charged towards the incoming disaster. Su Ming stared at the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, and determination appeared on his face. When he turned around, he charged into the depths of Death Vortex. He knew that the disaster that would come next was not something he could fight against, but he still had an important mission, and that was to head to the deepest part of Death Vortex to search for the connection between him and the shattered wills in the area. He wanted to verify the old man's guess and find the answer to everything. And this was what the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe longed to know. However, he could not obtain the answer, which was why he placed all his hopes on Su Ming. He hoped that Su Ming would be able to find the answer. He told Su Ming all the guesses in his heart, and he treated Su Ming as his successor. However, he did not inherit Su Ming's cultivation base or divine abilities, but a form of determination. It was his determination towards arid triad's will, the arid disaster, and the ultimate secret of arid triad expanse cosmos. Perhaps in the countless eons before the Great Destruction, there would always be some people who would try to search for the answer to everything with the same determination and great wisdom. Perhaps some people would succeed, but perhaps no one had ever succeeded. Even in this aeon, when the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe arrived, he still could not find the truth, even though he felt that he had already reached the edge of the truth. But he still could not truly walk into the secret. Su Ming was the scion he had chosen, and he would continue walking down the path of this guess and his determination. He would continue walking until he reached the direction of the answer to the ultimate secret hidden in arid triad expanse cosmos. Su Ming understood all of this, which was why when he turned around, even though booming sounds surged into the sky behind him and the old man's roars and roars echoed faintly in the air, he did not turn his head around. Instead, determination appeared on his face, and when he took a step forward, he charged into the depths of Death Vortex. He did not know just how deep Death Vortex was, nor did he know how far he was from its end. He also did not know whether the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe would be able to help him get through his disaster. He did not know any of this, but it was not important. What was important was that Su Ming's determination turned his footsteps and body into determination, and he walked further into the distance. Time passed in the vortex. He had no idea how much time had passed, but Su Ming could no longer hear the booming sounds from the antecedental spirit's disaster, and neither could he hear the old man's roars. The area around him gradually became quiet, and, in the end, there was only silence. Not a single sound echoed in the air. Only the rotation of the vortex seemed to last for an eternity. It was as if he had walked into another world. It was an empty world. Everything was still and empty, as if nothing existed. However, as this feeling rose in his heart, Su Ming slowly noticed that the Death aura in the area was becoming fewer and fewer. In the end, almost all of it had disappeared, and in its place was the power of Bright Yang. Bright Yang was the mortal enemy of all the lives in Death Vortex. It was a forbidden area of death that could not exist at the same time. Only Su Ming had a true world clone, and he could change whether it was Death or Bright Yang. Only by doing so could he continue charging forward in Death Vortex, which was gradually filled with Bright Yang aura. Gradually, the power of Bright Yang became thicker, and it was so thick that it surpassed all the power Su Ming had ever seen before. It filled the vortex, and, at that moment, it could no longer be called Death Vortex, but Bright Yang Vortex. An unknown amount of time passed. At the instant the Bright Yang aura reached its maximum density, Su Ming gradually came to a stop in the depths of the vortex. He stared ahead in a daze. Before him was a dazzling galactic vortex. It looked like Death Vortex was like a funnel. At that moment, Su Ming stood at the end of the lower part of the vortex, as if he just needed one more step to step out of the funnel-like vortex. When he stepped into the empty world with the dazzling galactic vortex, he could not see the end of it. It was like an expanse cosmos that had no end in sight. When he cast a glance at it, he would be unable to help himself but feel insignificant. This is... When Su Ming mumbled, his heart suddenly trembled because during that instant, a voice came languidly from the galactic vortex onto the funnel-like Death Vortex. There was an ancient air to that voice, along with a hint of indescribable frailty. It was as if the owner of that voice had no idea how much time had passed, and it echoed in the air unconsciously. Saying, the appearance of that voice caused Su Ming's heart to tremble. He could sense that there was a call coming from the beautiful vortex of stars in the empty world that made his soul tremble. In silence, a brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. Since he had already come to this place and seen everything, there was no reason for him to leave. Even if he would face endless danger once he took that step, if he left just like that, not only would the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe be disappointed, even Su Ming himself would not allow it. As a brilliant light shone in his eyes, Su Ming took a step forward without any hesitation. With it, he stepped out of the funnel-like Death Vortex and into the endless space. At the instant his body fused with it, Su Ming suddenly started trembling violently. He could not control it. Disbelief appeared in his eyes. In fact, his chest heaved non-stop, as if he had discovered something shocking that even with Su Ming's willpower, he could not suppress. This is. Su Ming swept his gaze across the area. The third eye at the center of his brow instantly opened, and his divine sense erupted with a bang. It spread through the area. Is this true morning Tao world? The disbelief in Su Ming's eyes grew stronger. At the instant he stepped into the place, he immediately sensed a familiarity. He was not unfamiliar with that familiarity. It was the presence of true morning Tao worlds well before it was possessed. There was no way Su Ming would forget that presence. It was the presence of true morning Tao world that he had become incredibly familiar with when he possessed it, when he fought against it and devoured it in the past. This place seemed to be the true morning Tao world that Su Ming had yet to possess. If that was all, perhaps it would not have been enough for Su Ming to lose his composure. But at the same time he discovered this, he also made a huge discovery. It was precisely this discovery that made it difficult for Su Ming to calm down. A storm raged in his heart. The presence here, this is in death aura. The entire true world, the entire space is filled with endless in-death aura. How could this be? Su Ming instinctively took a few steps forward. When he was far away from the funnel-like in-death vortex, he seemed to have understood something. When he turned his head around, he stared at in-death vortex behind him. What he could not see was a gigantic vortex. It was the exact same as the vortex he had seen in true morning Tao world on the other side of the vortex. However, even though its appearance was the same, it did not mean that everything was the same. Su Ming no longer sensed in-death aura from the vortex, but bright young aura. It was so thick that it seemed as if it could make all in-death aura disappear. Everything was the exact opposite. On the other side of true arid triad world, the entire true world was filled with bright yang aura. Only in-death vortex contained endless aura of death, and in this place the entire world was filled with in-death aura. Only the vortex that was exactly the same contained a shocking bright yang aura. Everything was the exact opposite, and the degree of it caused an epiphany he had gained in the land of berserkers to suddenly appear in Su Ming's mind. In-death region is like a mirror. Outside the mirror is bright yang, and inside the mirror is in-death. I once thought that the so-called mirror was the land of berserkers and the countless dimensions in the vortex. But by the looks of it now, I was wrong. In-death vortex is a mirror, and the world in the mirror isn't the mirror itself, but this place. Su Ming stared at his surroundings in a daze. He did not know what the expanse cosmos he saw at that moment was called. Was it arid triad, or was it something else? The first update is here. Today, we will continue with the third update. There is also the 918 today. Don't forget the humiliation of our country. Don't forget to vote. Chapter 1368. Mirror. No wonder I can sense true morning Tao world's presence here, because if this is the world in the mirror, then the four great true worlds are definitely here. Everything here should be the same as arid triad expanse cosmos, but I wonder whether there are any lives here. And there are also some differences here. Arid triad's true morning Tao world belongs to me. There are whirlwinds and arid triads gap there, but this place is empty, and there are quite a number of cultivation planets. Su Ming's pupils shrank. With one move, he charged into the distance, but after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, he stopped. What made him stop was that the entire true world had gone through a strange change almost at the instant he stepped into it. This change was not obvious in the beginning, but after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, it swiftly became stronger. Whirlwinds immediately appeared in the originally empty area. They looked as if they had just been born, but they grew stronger with each passing moment. After a moment, they filled the entire area, and this scene caused Su Ming to stop. His pupils shrank. He could clearly sense that the cultivation planets in the true world were swiftly shattering. A large area was crumbling in an inexplicable manner, as if a wave of power had descended and was going through some sort of change in the true world. The whirlwinds were the wind formed by the power of the world that had appeared in arid triad expanse cosmos, true morning Tao world. The originally complete cultivation planets were swiftly crumbling at that moment, and they were swiftly changing into arid triad's true morning Tao world, as if they were about to become the exact same. In fact, when Su Ming lifted his head, he saw the whirlwinds above the true world in the distance. As they swiftly gathered together, he could vaguely see the universe at the end of space being torn apart. Booming sounds spread through the entire true world, and a huge gap appeared. Arid Triad's gap. Su Ming's pupils shrank. He could naturally tell that the originally empty and calm true world had gone through an astonishing change once he arrived. It became the same as Arid Triad's true morning Tao world. In fact, during that instant, Su Ming could clearly sense that true morning Tao world was slowly gaining his presence. It was Su Ming's presence, and there was no way Su Ming would mistake it for someone else. He stood in a daze as he watched the entire true world turn into Arid Triad's true morning Tao world in just a short 2 hours. Arid Triad's gap, whirlwind, and morning Tao Sex mountain gate were all the same. Regardless of whether it was the structure or appearance, they were all the same. The true world also looked as if it was being destroyed. The degree of destruction was something it could not fight against. It was as if it was already destined and could not change anything. It could only let out soundless roars of indignation and roars that only Su Ming could hear. The tumbling was swiftly being replaced by Su Ming's will, but he did not attack. He only stood there and watched everything happen in a daze. When 2 hours passed, the true world became the same as Su Ming's Arid Triad's true world. Once it became his true world, Su Ming hesitated for a moment before he spread out his will and tried to touch the true world's will, which was clearly his. At the instant the two identical wills touched each other, Su Ming's body let out a bang. Booming sounds surged into the sky as if his mind had exploded. His body trembled, and his eyes instantly filled with red. Even a ferocious expression appeared on his face, but there was an excitement that surpassed his imagination in his eyes. His divine sense roared, his soul rippled, and his state of being increased exponentially. His will of an antecedental spirit, and his will increased by 1-fold at that instant. It was a complete doubling. It was as if another true world had appeared out of nowhere, and it had even fused perfectly with his true world, causing Su Ming's will to rise by leaps and bounds. It surpassed his previous self and rose to a realm that Su Ming could not believe. This realm was as if Su Ming had possessed 2 of the 4 great true worlds in Arid Triad. Booming sounds echoed in Su Ming's mind, causing him to throw his head back and let out a long roar. His voice shook the sky and earth and stirred up endless ripples in the true world. As they spread out, it was as if he was announcing that he was the master of everything in the world. Not only was he the master of Arid Triad's true world, he was also the master of true morning Tao world in the mirror. I understand now. This is the world in the mirror. If everything is set in place in the world outside, then this place will change as well. However, this change won't happen at the same time. It requires a turning point, such as my arrival. It was that turning point. Because I was true morning Tao world in Arid Triad, once I arrived here, everything in this place changed. It's the same in the true world, but I wonder whether it'll be the same in this place. Su Ming forced down the excitement in his heart. He sensed that he had swiftly become stronger. At that moment, he even had a feeling that even if he faced those in Avicania realm, he would not find it as difficult to fight against them as he did before. A powerful light shone in Su Ming's eyes. At that moment, he was confident that if he faced the 3rd disaster, he would be able to get through it with even more ease. Even if he faced the 4th disaster, he would not be able to make it as close to death as before. In fact, he had a certain degree of confidence that he would be able to get through the 5th disaster. Clearly, his strength was not reflected in his level of cultivation, but in his will, his soul, and his state of being. Everything in Arid Triad can affect the structure of this place, then does that mean that the changes in this place can also affect the structure of Arid Triad? In fact, will I run into another me here? When Su Ming thought of this, his heart suddenly trembled. This thought might seem too crazy to him, but in his heart, he believed that it was incredibly correct. There's another me here, and all the people I know. In fact, all the lives in Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos exist in this world. If that's really the case, then Senior Heavenly Spirit's guess is correct. All lives in the universe have their mortal enemy, and it's the same for Arid Triad's will. Everything has a positive and negative side, yin and yang. True Morning Tao world is here, and the other three great true worlds are here as well. There's also Divine Essence Star Ocean, and there's even All Spirits Hall here. A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. At that moment, his heart was shaken by his guesses and discoveries, and it was difficult for him to completely calm down. If there's also All Spirits Hall here, then, since I can obtain double my will because of the true world, then if I also go through one spirit ascension here, or in fact, if I go through 9 spirit ascensions here in an Arid Triad, then just how strong would my level of cultivation be? Su Ming's heart pounded in his chest. He did not need to think too far ahead. He only needed to think about how if he could go through 4 spirit ascensions here and 3 spirit ascensions in Arid Triad, then he would have gone through 8 spirit ascensions. At that moment, Su Ming did not dare to imagine just how strong this sort of spirit ascension would be. Most importantly, I want to find my other self here. I wonder whether my other self will also have Arid Triad's path and whether his fate will be the same as mine. But when I think about it, that won't be possible. My other self here should have another path, because while this place might be a mirror, it needs a chance to overlap with the mirror, and only then can changes happen. Before I came here, I didn't have this chance, which is why my other self, he has a completely different life. My other self is not the only one like this. All the lives here are the same. They won't have any connection with the world outside. I might say that this place is a mirror, but in truth, it's not like a mirror. Instead, it's like 2 expanse cosmoses. Perhaps they will overlap with each other once in a while, but once they do, they will separate again. Only when someone can move through them will the chance to change appear. That's it. The light of understanding shone in Su Ming's eyes. Then, logically speaking, there is also a will similar to Arid Triads in this expanse cosmos. It is, when Su Ming thought of this, his heart trembled, and he remembered the guess the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe had mentioned. It is the mortal enemy of Arid Triad's will. That is, Harmonious Morris Alba. Su Ming's expression continued changing. He thought of far too many things, such as the 3 ancient wills. They were definitely lives from this expanse cosmos, but due to some unique traits, they existed in Een Death Vortex. This place and Arid Triad Expanse Cosmos are existences that can fuse with each other, but they also counter each other. If that's the case, then the other me in this place can fuse with me. If I can fuse with the me in this place, then I will become the one and only between this place and Arid Triad. Perhaps only then will I be considered the true me. Su Ming's thoughts continued boiling. He thought of many, many things, and at that moment, for some unknown reason, a sentence he had heard a long time ago in the land of berserkers appeared in his head. It was a sentence someone had told him a long time ago. When you learn who you are, you will no longer be you. When you no longer know who you are, you will be you. I finally understand. Su Ming fell silent before he sighed softly. Then, since Senior Tian Ling said that the will in this place is related to me, I can also guess some of the reasons behind it. As for whether this guess is correct or not, it will depend on whether my previous guess is the truth. Everything will depend on the other me in this expanse cosmos, just what sort of identity he has. A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes. All of his guesses were connected to one point at that moment. As long as this point was established, he would be enlightened. Surely, the other me should have sensed some changes at that moment. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. When he spread his divine sense outwards, he turned his will into his divine sense and turned it into the will of heaven to sweep through the entire true world. Since Su Ming's will was equivalent to two true worlds, when he spread his divine sense outwards, the area it covered was so large that it could be said to be boundless. After a moment, a strange and hesitant look suddenly appeared on Su Ming's face. He did not find his other self, but instead found another person in his divine sense. Su Ming was momentarily stunned. With a single move, he charged into the distance. Chapter 1369. It was filled with death aura, just like how Eritread was filled with bright yang, but it was difficult for the people who were born there to notice and distinguish it. In the world filled with death aura, there were also 4 great true worlds. The names were different. Morning Dao world was known as a mortal sect, Sacred world was known as illusory yang, and the Emperor of Abyss true world was known as Sky Hill. As for the 4th true world, it was known as Victory Village. At that moment, within True Victory Village was an empty palace. There was a figure sitting cross-legged and meditating. It was a young man, and his age could not be seen on his face. The only thing that could be felt was the dust of time surrounding him. He had his eyes closed, and his expression was aloof. If Su Ming was there, he would definitely be able to tell at first glance that this person was the other him in this world. Their appearances were the exact same. He had a calm expression on his face as he sat cross-legged, but in an instant, he started trembling. His eyes flew open, and at the instant he did so, the shadow of a butterfly could be clearly seen in his pupils. As his body trembled, his aura swiftly increased, as if a wave of power had descended and surged into his body, causing his state of life and will to instantly increase exponentially. This process lasted for about 2 hours before it slowly calmed down. The young man's eyes were bloodshot. To him, the past 2 hours had been like the world had been turned upside down, and his level of cultivation had increased by far too much. A dazed look appeared on his face. The sudden increase in his level of cultivation left him incredibly puzzled. What happened? The young man mumbled with a frown. 2 hours ago, his level of cultivation had been equivalent to those in Life Realm, but at that moment, he had become an existence akin to those in Death Realm. This sort of exponential increase in his level of cultivation would normally cause discomfort in others. After all, it was an external power, but the young man felt that it was not the case. It was as if this level of cultivation had always belonged to him. As the young man fell into silence, a glint appeared in his eyes. He lifted his head and looked outside the palace. In just the span of a few breaths, a shadow charged out from the palace and instantly appeared in front of the young man to turn into an old man. He was dressed in a black robe, and there was a butterfly embroidered on it. As he approached, he immediately knelt down and worshipped the young man. The old man had extraordinary power. He was in Death Realm, but there was not a hint of awkwardness or dissatisfaction in his actions when he kowtowed to the young man. Instead, he was incredibly sincere, as if he was worshipping his ancestor. Greetings, Lord Child of Morris Alba. A drastic change has occurred in harmonious Morris Alba, Expanse Cosmos, true immortal sect world. The entire true world has been reduced to ruins in just a short 2 hours. Most of the planets have collapsed, and they are surrounded by whirlwinds. In fact, a huge gap has appeared in them. The old man said quickly, and anxiety appeared on his face. Got it. The young man's expression was the same as ever as he spoke slowly. The old man wanted to say something, but hesitated. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he stood up and was about to take his leave. However, right at this moment, the young man suddenly said something. Did the other 2 children of Morris Alba do anything? Not at the moment, the old man said respectfully. Seeing that the young man was deep in thought, the old man didn't give any further instructions and left the hall. It's also 2 hours, and it's true immortal sect world. This is strange. The young man was silent for a moment before a cold sneer appeared at the corners of his lips. As one of the 3 reincarnations of Harmonious Morris Alba's will, he had the ability to communicate with Harmonious Morris Alba's will since he was young. It was precisely because of this that he became one of the 3 children of Morris Alba. He had also become the representative of harmonious Morris Alba's will in this expanse cosmos. His status was incredibly high, and with one word, he could kill 10,000 people. With one word, he could make the universe go mad. This was his right, because as harmonious Morris Alba's reincarnation, he was believed to be the manifestation of harmonious Morris Alba's will in this expanse cosmos. Could it be that my disaster has arrived? In silence, the young man closed his eyes. He lifted his right hand and pushed at the center of his brows. With it, his body shuddered, and the shadow of a butterfly gradually manifested behind him. It surrounded the young man and turned into a whirlwind. The butterfly danced elegantly in the whirlwind, and in the end, it completely fused into the whirlwind and submerged the young man's body. This was him using his right as a child of Morris Alba to communicate with harmonious Morris Alba's will. Perhaps more accurately speaking, he was carrying out his greatest power as harmonious Morris Alba's reincarnation, by borrowing harmonious Morris Alba's power. As a child of Morris Alba, this was an ability only he and the other 2 children of Morris Alba could possess. It was also this ability that allowed him to instantly kill those in Death Realm, even though he was only in Life Realm. Harmonious Morris Alba, Expanse Cosmos, was in true immortal sect world. The entire true world was reduced to ruins due to the sudden change just then. Countless planets were destroyed, causing the hearts of the cultivators in the place to tremble under the disaster. Fortunately, harmonious Morris Alba, Expanse Cosmos, had maintained a certain degree of mysteriousness and restrictions on true immortal sect world. For example, not too many cultivators were allowed in this place, and the area around Bright Young Vortex was known as the Forbidden Grounds. That was why most of the damage caused by the disaster that swept through true immortal sect world came from the true world itself. The cultivators were not affected too much. At that moment, on a cultivation planet that had been split in half at the edge of true immortal sect world was a mountain that was once 100,000 feet tall. Right then, it had turned into a ravine, and there was a middle-aged cultivator looking around him with a wry smile on his face. There were 7 people surrounding him at that moment. All of them had aloof expressions on their faces as they glared at the person. Fellow Taoists, why did you chase after me? I really didn't steal your sex, Jade Thread. I really didn't. I swore an oath just now. The middle-aged man looked at the 7 people and explained himself with a wry smile. Shut up. If it wasn't because of eldest senior brother's orders, we would have captured you a long time ago and brought you back to the sect. We've already given you a chance, but how dare you mention the oath you swore just now? The expressions of the 7 people instantly changed drastically. They took a step forward and surrounded the middle-aged man. One of them immediately spoke in exasperation. They did not dare let the middle-aged man continue speaking. They would never forget just how terrifying the scene just now had been. Just now, the 10 of them had finally caught up to the middle-aged man in front of them in true immortal sect world. Since this person was the closest friend of their sect's eldest senior brother, they did not make things difficult for him. They only asked him to explain the matter clearly. As for whether they would bring him back to the sect, that would depend on the situation. After all, they had come out to investigate a total of 6 people, and the person in front of them was just one of them. Everything went smoothly. Once the person explained, he seemed to be worried that they would not believe him, which was why he swore an oath, saying that if what he said was false, he would make the world collapse. The 7 of them naturally did not care about these oaths. Besides, with the middle-aged man's character, it was rumored that he swore the same oath to different people every single day. However, what they did not expect was that the moment the middle-aged man finished speaking, the world immediately collapsed. If that was all, it would have been fine, but the middle-aged man reacted very quickly. He immediately changed his oath and said that if his words were false, the planet would collapse. In the end, at the instant he said those words, the planet roared and shattered. In his terror, the middle-aged man swore again that the space would shatter, and right then, A whirlwind howled in space as if it truly wanted to shatter the universe, causing the entire true immortal sect world to instantly descend into the apocalypse. Not only were the 7 of them stunned by this scene, even the middle-aged man looked as if he had seen a ghost. Then, as the world changed drastically, he fled. Right then, he was caught up to again. When he heard the person's exasperated shout, the middle-aged man immediately put on a distressed expression. He felt even more gloomy in his heart. He had sworn too many oaths in his life, but none of them had come true. However, what happened just then had truly terrified him. He had not expected that once he said those words, the world would truly collapse. And, judging by the looks of it, the entire true immortal sect world would collapse, and space would shatter. All of this gave him the feeling that the heavens were punishing him. But the price of punishment is too great. I'm just a nobody. I just like swearing oaths. There's no need for me to use a true world's collapse as a warning. The middle-aged man felt incredibly anxious. When he saw the 7 people take a step forward and surround him with hostile expressions, he instinctively spoke. I swear. Shut up. How dare you swear? Are you going to let us capture him, or are you going to leave with us obediently? When the 7 people saw that he was about to speak, their expressions changed drastically. Some of them even formed seals and looked as if they were about to cast their divine abilities. I swear, damn it, I swear that if I steal your sect's jade thread, then let the child of Morris Alba descend and personally punish me. When he saw that the 7 people were about to attack, the middle-aged man let out a loud roar. His voice was filled with grievance. This was the first time he swore this sort of oath. After all, swearing on the name of the child of Morris Alba in harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos was an incredibly serious oath. It was the same as swearing on the name of arid triads while in arid triad expanse cosmos. Regardless of whether the oath would come true or not, the oath itself was a form of determination. However, when the 7 people heard those words, their footsteps came to a halt. They were truly afraid. The person before them gave them a feeling that he was a little too strange. Practically all his oaths would come true. At that moment, when he heard the man named Qian's words, one of the 7 instinctively lifted his head to look at the sky. Almost at the instant he lifted his head, he shuddered and sucked in a sharp breath. The sound of it contained a shock in his heart at that moment. As the others lifted their heads, the middle-aged man also lifted his head, and they saw a long arc charged over from the sky at that moment. Once it closed in on the group, Su Ming's face was revealed. At the instant the people saw him clearly, they sucked in sharp breaths. We are disciples of freezing Eastern clan. Greetings, Lord Child of Morris Alba. The 7 people knelt down and worshipped Su Ming. The man named Qian's face turned pale, and he nearly fell limply to the ground. He suddenly felt that his retribution had arrived. Tomorrow is the Moon Festival. I wish all of you a happy Moon Festival. May your families be reunited. Don't worry, tomorrow it will still be the 3rd watch. Chapter 1370. First of all, I wish everyone a happy Mid-Autumn Festival and a happy family reunion. Also, have you guys enjoyed reading the past few days? Although it was a supplement, it was written in a day. I hope that while everyone enjoyed reading it, you can give Chio MO recommendation votes. If there are monthly votes, that would be even better. To me, that would be a Mid-Autumn Festival mooncake. So, seeking monthly votes, seeking mooncakes. Chapter 1371. Child of Morris Alba. A barely noticeable glint shone in Su Ming's eyes. With his intelligence, unless he ran into an old monster like the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe, it would be very difficult for others to find any clues about him. In fact, even an old monster like the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe would not be able to see everything. After all, Su Ming's experiences over the 1,000-something years were so complicated that it was not something other cultivators could imagine. The people before him were some of the cultivators he had seen in the true world through his divine sense. Su Ming had come to this place for the middle-aged man named Qian. However, he was still a little uncertain because everything that existed in Arid Triad also existed in this place. He was not certain whether the man named Qian was his old friend. It was especially so when he heard the cultivators address him, as well as the nervousness in their respectful expressions. Su Ming had achieved some of his goals. He had wanted to appear before these people and see whether they could recognize his other self in this world. Freezing winter sect. Su Ming's expression remained the same. When he spoke faintly, it was as if he did not have much of an impression of this sect. When the 7 cultivators worshipped Su Ming respectfully, one of them immediately said, "Our sect is not big. Lord Child of Morris Alba, you must not have paid too much attention to us. We are one of the 4 sects under Li Tian Wang, one of the 3 Jade Palace Immortals. Our sect master has inherited the deity position of Li Hai, one of Li Tian Wang's 4 generals. I have a use for this person. Leave," Su Ming said calmly without asking for details. The 7 hesitated for a moment. They cast each other a glance before bowing to Su Ming again. Then, they turned into 7 long arcs that charged into the sky. Soon, they disappeared without a trace. The middle-aged man's legs were trembling at that moment. He really wanted to slap himself. In his heart, he thought that he should never have sworn an oath with the child of Morris Alba. But even then, he still felt that the fact that he had sworn was too bizarre. It was so bizarre that he stared at Su Ming with a dumbfounded expression, and his heart trembled even more. Lord Child of Morris Alba, what business do you have with me?" The middle-aged man's mouth was slightly parched, and he instinctively put on a fawning expression. Su Ming turned his head around and cast his gaze on the man named Qian. After some time, he suddenly said, "Qian Shun, I'm here." That man was naturally Qian Shun, the Qian Shun who had gotten to know Su Ming in the land of berserkers and stayed with him for a long period of time until Su Ming was forced to go to Divine Essence Star Ocean and lost contact with him. Later on, Su Ming had asked his second senior brother about Qian Shun. Soon after Su Ming went to the barren lands of Divine Essence, he had left on his own. Su Ming could still remember the grief and anger on Qian Shen's face when the direct descendant from Morning Dao sect had witnessed the deaths of the people from Ninth Summit, along with the faint determination to become a powerful warrior. The memories rose in Su Ming's mind. He stared at the man in front of him. He could not quite tell whether he was Arid Triad's Qian Shun or the Qian Shun from this world. Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he suddenly asked, "Do you still recognize me?" When he said this, Qian Shun suddenly shuddered. From the moment Su Ming appeared, not many changes in his emotions could be seen on his face. At most, he was vexed and made oaths. But in truth, at the instant Qian Shun saw Su Ming, anguish that others would find difficult to notice had appeared in his heart. That anguish came from Su Ming's appearance and a memory of the past, but he did not dare to believe it. Instead, he stood in a daze and stared at Su Ming blankly. Su Ming's appearance was slightly different from when he was in the land of berserkers, but if someone stared at him for a prolonged period of time, they would still be able to find some traces of it. He stared at Qian Shun, and after a long while, he sighed softly. "Do you still remember Ninth Summit?" When he said those words, Qian Shun shuddered. Disbelief appeared on his face. How could he forget the Ninth Summit? It was a place he would never forget for the rest of his life. In the past, he had accidentally left this place and entered Bright Young Vortex. Over there, he had gotten to know some people in a berserker's world. The events in Ninth Summit, right up to its wretched state in the end, were deeply branded in his mind. At that time, he did not know the secrets regarding Harmonious Morris Alba Expanse Cosmos. When Su Ming went to the barren lands of Divine Essence, Qian Shun chose to leave in silence and return to his world. When he wandered about Harmonious Morris Alba Expanse Cosmos, he had seen a grand event in Harmonious Morris Alba Expanse Cosmos from the distance. That grand event was the appearance of the 3rd child of Morris Alba in true Immortal Sect world. He would never forget how excited he had been at that time when he saw the 3rd child of Morris Alba. He would also not forget the aloofness he encountered when he tried to get into contact with the 3rd child of Morris Alba. He was also stunned and when he came to an epiphany, he became dejected and distanced himself from him. Lord Child of Morris Alba, I don't understand what you're saying. Qianqian was silent for a moment before he put on the obsequious look of a nobody on his face again. He spoke with a bitter smile in his heart. He did not dare to be certain, because as time passed, he slowly noticed the secrets regarding harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos. The people who existed here also existed in the world outside, but they were not the same person. The Su Ming before him was clearly the exact same as the child of Morris Alba. It was difficult for Qianqian to tell whether this person was Su Ming or the child of Morris Alba. Su Ming was silent. He recognized Qianqian. From a series of reactions, Su Ming could tell many things, but he did not force himself to acknowledge him. Instead, in silence, he cast Qianqian a deep glance. I didn't expect that you would come from this place. Take care. Qianqian was Su Ming's friend. Even though his relationship with Su Ming could not compare to that of his eldest senior brothers, he was not an enemy, but a friend. As Su Ming shook his head, he turned around and walked into the air. Since Qianqian was hesitant and did not want to acknowledge him because of his difficulties, no matter what those difficulties were, Su Ming would not force him. Friendship was sometimes like strangers meeting by chance. When they met again, perhaps they would become strangers meeting by chance again. As he watched Su Ming's back gradually rise into the air, great conflict appeared on Qianqian's face, and he shouted loudly, "Who is the person who scares me the most by your side?" "You, Qian." Su Ming came to a halt in midair and turned his head around to look at Qianqian. "Why do you say that?" When Qianqian said those words, he did not say anything else. Tears fell from the corners of his eyes. The abyss dragon that turned into a mutt bullied you, and Yu Xian bullied the abyss dragon. That's why you believe that Yu Xian was the strongest and the most terrifying. Su Ming stared at Qianqian, and nostalgia appeared on his face. That period of time had been very beautiful. I am not the child of Morris Alba. I am Su Ming from the land of berserkers. At the instant Su Ming said those words, more tears fell from Qianqian's eyes. He stared at Su Ming in a daze, and excitement gradually appeared on his face. Su Ming, it's you. It's really you. You're not the child of Morris Alba. You're Su Ming. It was a cultivation planet that had been broken in half. The color of the sky was not blue, but dark. Su Ming could see wind howling at the ends of the sky. The ground was broken, the mountains had collapsed, and the empty ground was filled with cracks. There was a small empty spot between the cracks on the ground. There was a table there, and there were 2 pots of wine on it. Su Ming sat cross-legged on it, and by his side was Qianqian. Su Ming listened to Qianqian talk about his experiences. He had entered Bright Young Vortex by chance, then entered the land of berserkers. Then, since Su Ming had gone to Divine Essence Star Ocean, Qianqian chose to leave and return to harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos. In this place, he had met far too many people. There was another Su Ming, another Yu Xian. This is harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos. In the legends of the berserkers, there is a butterfly known as harmonious Morris Alba. This legend is true. In our expanse cosmos, harmonious Morris Alba is supreme. There are 4 true worlds here. There is a race here known as the children of Morris Alba. They are like the children of harmonious Morris Alba and the reincarnation of harmonious Morris Alba. In truth, due to some unique reasons, they can communicate with harmonious Morris Alba's will and borrow its power. Qianqian's words faltered for a moment. He cast a glance at Su Ming, then said hesitantly, "I also saw. Bai Su. She's not a cultivator. She's a mortal I saw many years ago on a cultivation planet in True Sky Hill World. Her family is a great one in the mortal world. I didn't see second senior brother or Hu Zi, but I remember Yu Xian clearly. Right now, she's in True Ingxiang World, and she's..." Qianqian's words faltered again. He hesitated for a moment before he continued. "She's the 3rd child of Morris Alba's wife." Su Ming fell silent. He had long since thought that perhaps the people of Arid Triad had their other selves in harmonious Morris Alba, but the land of berserkers was located in the vortex. Not all the people there had their other selves in the vortex. Only those who possessed a certain potential would do so. Su Ming was one of them, and Bai Su was one of them. Bai Su was easy to explain. She was a cultivator from Arid Triad, and Su Ming was also easy to explain. He was not a life form from Een Death Vortex. This is harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos. There are 4 great true worlds here, and there are immortal sect expanse cosmos, illusory Yang world, Sky Hill world, and Victory Village. There are quite a large number of cultivators in harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos, and they are scattered throughout the 4 great true worlds. True immortal sect expanse cosmos was isolated many years ago and is not allowed to form any sort of faction of power in this place. The other 3 true worlds have 3 children of Morris Alba keeping watch over them. There are also powerful sects in each of the 3 true worlds, such as Jade Palace in Sky Hill World. It has the Jade Emperor, Li Tian Wang, the god of 2 tunnels, and the Young Fenghua. The Jade Emperor is the leader, and the other 3 have their own sections. They are collectively known as Jade Palace. True illusory Yang world has the saints of the 4 continents. Saint Do is the leader, and the second son of the saints of Cloud, Tao, and Void have formed their own force of power. There is also Victory Village expanse cosmos. There are 10 great mournful death kings under the children of Morris Alba. They control the supreme treasure of the 18 spirit hells, and they are incredibly powerful. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival. I've sent you the first chapter, and I'll continue with the 3rd chapter during the festival. Chapter 1372. There are 3 children of Morris Alba, and one of them is my other self in this expanse cosmos. This also explains why I could step into the vortex, but the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe could not. Because the other me can communicate with harmonious Morris Alba's will hear. He is the supreme child of Morris Alba in this place besides harmonious Morris Alba's will. Su Ming closed his eyes slightly to hide his thoughts. As for the other 2 children of Morris Alba, who are they? A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes, and he thought of another question. If the other me here can communicate with harmonious Morris Alba, then can I as well? Di Tian is hiding in Een Death Vortex. Does he have some sort of connection with harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos? And Su Xianyi, he's a man of great talent and ambition. My level of cultivation might have surpassed his, but I've never been able to figure out the core of his plan. I have a feeling that I'm missing some important clues by the looks of it. Does he also know of harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos existence? When Su Ming thought of this, a myriad of thoughts raced in his head. In silence, he did not regard the factions of power in the 3 great true worlds with any importance. What he paid the most attention to was the divine abilities of the 3 children of Morris Alba, who could use harmonious Morris Alba's will in this expanse cosmos. If I can bring you to... While Su Ming was immersed in his thoughts, Qinshan seemed to have said something. Su Ming stopped thinking and lifted his head to look at him. I'm saying that if you want to see Bai Su, I can bring you to the planet where she is, but it has already been 1,000-something years. As a mortal, she should have died a long time ago. Qinshan did not know what Su Ming had gone through. His memories were still stuck in the past, which was why he said those words. Su Ming was silent for a moment, as if he had remembered something. Once he touched his storage bag, he nodded. Qinshan's expression was slightly complicated. Clearly, he had misunderstood Su Ming's feelings for Bai Su. He sighed, and after a moment, the 2 of them turned into 2 long arcs that charged into the planet and instantly left into the distance. True Sky Hill Expanse Cosmos was filled with dazzling nebulae. From the distance, it was incredibly beautiful, and a dazzling air filled the hearts of all those who saw it. A long arc shot through the sky. With Qinshan in tow, Su Ming took a step forward and approached the planet. With Qinshan's level of cultivation, If he relied on his own power, he would need a long time before he could step into Sky Hill. But as Su Ming swept him up, his speed surpassed that of shifting. In just 2 hours, Su Ming and Qian Shun left true immortal sect world and stepped into Sky Hill's galaxy. The galaxy was endless, and it was quiet. Not many cultivators could be seen, and even if there were, they would not be able to detect Su Ming. Under Qian Shen's guidance, the time it takes for another 2 incense sticks to burn past, and a blue cultivation planet appeared in front of Su Ming in true Sky Hill world. The cultivation planet was very beautiful. It was blue because most of the planet was occupied by seawater. There were 2 continents on it. Su Ming moved based on Qian Shen's guidance. As the sky changed, he descended on the continent to the right at the top of a tall mountain. The mountain wind whistled, bringing with it a chill. This place was covered in pure white snow, and as far as the eye could see, the falling snowflakes seemed boundless. It's this continent. I remember it was in that direction back then. This is the capital of a mortal country. Qian Shun pondered for a moment and pointed into the distance. Su Ming looked over, and his expression remained the same. After some time, he shook his head. Countries will always change over the course of 1,000 years. That place is no longer. Su Ming closed his eyes and spread his divine sense outwards. After a long while, when he reopened his eyes, a complicated look appeared on his face. He turned around and disappeared from the snow-covered summit with Qian Shun. When they reappeared, they were already outside a mountain village. That mountain village seemed to be isolated from the rest of the world. Smoke curled up from chimneys during the morning. Occasionally, the sound of dogs barking could be heard, mixed with the sounds of children playing. The mountain village was not big. There were only about 60-something families in it. In the snowy morning, there were a few children who were building snowmen while laughing merrily. Su Ming looked at them quietly and walked over calmly. No mortals could see him when he walked out. When he arrived outside a family in the mountain village, Su Ming's footsteps came to a halt. There were quite a number of women walking in and out of the house, and they were continuously bringing hot water into a house. Occasionally, a woman's muffled voice would come from the house. A man was pacing about anxiously outside. His wife was about to give birth, but she could not give birth. It was as if the time had not arrived yet, and it was as if the person they were waiting for had not arrived. Su Ming watched this and quietly walked into the courtyard, then stepped into another house by the side. It was an ancestral hall, and there were quite a number of memorial tablets placed in it. They were the ancestors of the family who had been worshipping them for generations. Qian Shun followed by Su Ming's side and watched him quietly. He looked at the memorial tablets in the ancestral hall, and eventually his gaze landed on one that was slightly higher up. He could still occasionally hear the voice of the pregnant woman in the other house. After a long while, Su Ming sighed softly. Once he touched his storage bag, he turned around and took a step forward. When he reappeared, he was already in the pregnant woman's room. Su Ming stared at the woman who was about to give birth with great difficulty. He stared at her pale face, and in silence, he patted his storage bag. An illusory figure that looked like a wandering soul flew out and floated around him. It was the Celestial Maiden. As he stared at the Celestial Maiden, Su Ming sighed softly. He swung his right hand, and the Celestial Maiden's soul circled around Su Ming a few times with a hint of reluctance to part before it slowly fused into the pregnant woman's stomach. Perhaps I was destined to come here and end things with you a second time. The first time was Arid Triad, and the second time was Harmonious Morris Alba. Su Ming said softly. Once he saw the Celestial Maiden's soul disappear into the pregnant woman's stomach, he turned around and left quietly. At the instant Su Ming left the room, he heard a baby crying. There seemed to be a reluctance to part in that voice, along with a hint of regret. But what washed away the sadness was the family's cheers and laughter. Qian Shun stared at all of this in a daze. He did not understand why, because he did not understand Su Ming's experiences. Su Ming sat beside a lake on the continent in true Sky Hill world and stared at it. Snow fell from the sky, but it could not seal the water. Heat rose from the surface of the lake, allowing others to guess that there might be a warm spring at the bottom of the lake. Tell me, where is your enemy? Su Ming asked faintly while staring at the lake. Qian Shun was momentarily stunned. Just as he was about to say something, Su Ming turned his head around and looked at him with a smile. I won't be staying in harmonious Morris Alba expands cosmos for long, and I have something to do. If you still won't tell me, then once I leave, you won't have the chance to, Su Ming said with a smile. Su Ming said with a smile. With his intelligence, there was no way he would not be able to tell that Qian Shun had intentionally mentioned by Su, and his goal was to lure him to Sky Hill. If anyone else had done this, Su Ming would have wanted to kill them, but Qian Shun definitely had a need for his power. Instead of hiding it, it would be better for him to be direct. Awkwardness appeared on Qian Shen's face. He looked as if he wanted to explain something, but in the end, he gritted his teeth and wrapped his fist in his palm before bowing deeply towards Su Ming. Sky Hill Jade Palace is Eastern Deity Sect under Li Tian Wang's command. The current head disciple of the sect should have been me, but I was set up by a villain and was forced to leave. That person has a lot of connections in Western Deity Sect, and he's the son of Li Shou, one of the 4 generals of Li Tian Wang. He crippled my cultivation base and snatched my wife so that he could fight for the position of the head disciple. He forced me to flee all year round, as if he was toying with me. This happened in the past, and it was also because of it that I had to flee into Bright Yang Vortex and enter the Berserker's world. When I returned, he might not have attacked me again, but every single time I returned to the sect to pay my respects to my master, he would cause trouble for me. My level of cultivation is not as high as his, and I can't take revenge for the grudge in the past, so I can only endure it. It's just like what happened in the past. When the neighboring sect lost their treasures, he blamed it on me. If it wasn't because I was friends with the head disciple of Freezing East Sect, I would have been humiliated by him again. How do you want to deal with Western Deity Sect? Su Ming looked at Qian Shun. It's fine if I just kill him. If I can. Qian Shun gritted his teeth, and a ferocious look appeared on his face. But before he could speak, Su Ming nodded. I don't care about reason. I only care about relationships. Since you've spoken, Western Deity Sect will be destroyed, Su Ming said slowly. When he said these words, Qian Shun sucked in a sharp breath. He originally wanted to say that if it was possible, it would be best if he could kill the other seniors in secret, but when he thought about Western Deity Sect status as the sect master, he hesitated. Anything else? Su Ming asked. Also, Northern Wave Sect is also one of the 4 sects under Li Tian Wang. In the past, Qian Shun felt slightly excited in his heart. He could hear the casualness in Su Ming's words, and he could vaguely guess Su Ming's level of cultivation. But before he could finish speaking, Su Ming nodded again. Is there anyone else from Northern Wave Sect? There's also Nanyu Sect. It's also Li Tian Wang. All right, I'll wipe off this Li Tian Wang you mentioned. I'll wipe off all his sects, all right? Eastern Freezing Sect treats me pretty well. Huh. Wipe off Li Tian Wang. He's a powerful warrior who has completed Death Realm. His level of cultivation is so high that it's hard to imagine. When Qian Shun said those words, he sucked in a sharp breath again and stared at Su Ming with a dumbfounded expression, because Su Ming had said those 3 words to him again. Anything else? No, nothing else. Qian Shen's heart trembled. He suddenly felt slightly terrified. Based on his understanding of Su Ming, he knew that he was definitely not doing it on purpose. Instead, he was truly making light of the situation. Wiping off a few sects and a powerful warrior who had completed Death Realm was done in such a casual manner. This was enough to tell just how great Su Ming's level of cultivation was. This caused Qian Shen's breathing to quicken, but he still found it hard to believe. But Li Tian Wang is, all right, bring me to Western Deity Sect first. I'll have to deal with your appearance. After all, I'll be leaving after this, but you'll still have to stay here. Su Ming turned around, lifted his right hand, and swung it at Qian Shun. Immediately, Qian Shen's appearance changed to that of an old man. In fact, even his presence changed. Unless it was someone whose will surpass Su Ming's, no one would be able to tell that the old man was Qian Shun. I'm begging for monthly votes and mooncakes. Chapter 1373. One of the reasons he helped Qianshun was because they were old friends. Since Qianshun had spoken, Su Ming would not refuse him. Besides, wiping out a few sects and killing a cultivator in Death Realm it would indeed be an understatement. Forget that. Even if he wanted to wipe out all the powerful warriors in True Sky Hill World, it was not impossible for Su Ming to do so. Besides helping Qianshun take revenge, Su Ming also had his own plans. He wanted to be ostentatious in harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos and attract the attention of the powerful warriors in this expanse cosmos. He wanted his other self, the child of Morris Alba, to search for him. This was much easier than searching for him on his own. After all, this was harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos. If his other self wanted to hide, Su Ming would not have a lot of time to search for him. There were plenty of places he wanted to go, such as All Spirits Hall. If that was the case, he might as well disguise himself. By doing so, everything he did would be attributed to the child of Morris Alba, and by doing so, he would be forced to show himself. He wanted to fuse with his other self. This was a cruel thing, but after experiencing so many things, Su Ming knew that if he had the chance, his other self would also choose to fuse with him. It was just a matter of who would take the lead. Both sides had their own beliefs. There was no right or wrong in this matter. If there was, then the wrong was the world. Su Ming did not immediately search for All Spirits Hall, because he had gradually come to a realization that perhaps his strength would also cause his other self in this place to become stronger due to his descent into this place. Besides the supreme child of Morris Alba, the strongest force of power in True Sky Hill World was Jade Palace. The Jade Emperor was clearly a sublime paragon, and the three main forces that existed under him were like branches. Li Tianwang, the god of two tunnels, and the young Feng Hua had each created three forces of power, and each of them had quite a number of sections. They were like a big tree that had its roots deeply rooted in True Sky Hill World. Western Deity Sect was just one of the branches on the tree. With Qianshun leading the way, Su Ming arrived in Western Deity Sect in just the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. As he stared at the sect in the distance, monstrous killing intent appeared in Qianshun's eyes. He had already made up his mind. When he rushed over with Su Ming later, he would definitely kill the eldest disciple of the Sealmaker. He would definitely use all his power to move through the 13 planets. It was a sect formed by 13 cultivation planets. There were tens of thousands of disciples in the sect, and it stood tall in the galaxy. It had existed for a long time, and its sect master, Li Shou, had inherited the legacy of the four generals under Li Tianwang's command. Every generation of them was a powerful warrior in Death Realm, and their mighty presence was not to be offended. Yet on that day, a loud bang that shook the sky and earth and could be heard by all of True Sky Hill World echoed in Western Deity Sect. It caused Qianshun's heart to tremble, and he widened his eyes in disbelief because he saw that Su Ming had only lifted his right hand and pushed down. True Sky Hill World immediately looked as if it had crumbled. Ripples swept through the galaxy and turned into a huge palm. That palm was boundless and covered the entire Western Deity Sect before it pushed down fiercely. As loud booming sounds reverberated in space, Qianshun watched in disbelief as the 13 cultivation planets shriveled up and crumbled to pieces. Countless cultivators had their bodies and souls destroyed on the spot. Even if some of the powerful warriors tried to fly up, the moment they did so, their bodies immediately exploded with shrill screams. Only one person, a middle-aged man dressed in armor, rushed out with a roar of despair. There was fear and indescribable panic on his face. He looked as if he wanted to say something, but when the hand tightened its grip, all the fragments of the planets, all the survivors, and even the armored man were reduced to nothingness. When the hand relaxed, Western Deity Sect disappeared from True Sky Hill World for all eternity. All of this happened in just the span of a few breaths. It had just started, but it had already ended. Lead the way, Northern Wave's sect, Su Ming said flatly. He looked at Qianshun, who had been so shocked by the scene that he was flabbergasted. Chen's thick, killing intent had turned into cold sweat at that moment. All the preparations he had made had been completely destroyed by the scene at that moment. All of the cultivators he had seen trying to fly up were existences that made him tremble. All of them were powerful warriors who could make the entire area tremble with just a stomp of their feet. However, these people were not even able to fly before they were killed miserably in body and soul. It was especially so for the armored man. There was no way Qianshan would mistake him for someone else. He was the sect master of Western Deity Sect, Li Shou, one of the 4 great generals under Li Tianwang's command. This person's level of cultivation was something Qianshan could only dream of. In fact, there had been a long period of time when Li Shou, the sect master, was the strongest person in Qianshan's heart. Yet right then, such a powerful warrior could not even withstand a single blow from Su Ming. Qianshan finally understood why Su Ming had been so casual when he said that he would wipe off Li Tianwang. Northern Waves Sect. Northern Waves Sect. Qianshan's spirits lifted. His voice became hoarse, and blood capillaries appeared in his eyes due to his excitement. He pointed into the distance. Northern Wave Sect is over there. After the time it takes for 2 incense sticks to burn, booming sounds reverberated in Northern Wave Sect. The entire sect was instantly reduced to ashes. All the cultivators and powerful warriors could not escape the disaster. All of them had their bodies and souls destroyed. With Su Ming's strength, he was the will of heaven. The strength of his will was only weaker than that of Arid Triad and Harmonious Morris Alba. If he wanted to kill a person or a sect, he only needed one thought. After the time it takes for another 2 incense sticks to burn, Southern Sea Sect was wiped off from True Sky Hill World. The 3 sects were destroyed, and the entire process took less than 2 hours. It happened so quickly that even Qianshan found himself unable to react to it, much less Li Tianwang, who was under Jade Palace. At that moment, Qianshan could no longer estimate how excited he was. He only knew that his eyes had turned red from excitement. He had searched through his memories to search for all the people who had bullied him over the years, and he had indeed found quite a number of them. Just as he was about to tell Su Ming about them, an enraged roar suddenly came from the distant galaxy with a crazed howl. Who is it? Who would be so bold as to destroy my sect of generals? When that voice appeared, Qianshan shuddered. He could immediately tell that it was Li Tianwang's voice. He was one of the 3 strongest, powerful warriors in True Sky Hill World, next to the child of Morris Alba and the Jade Emperor. All the rumors regarding Li Tianwang rose in Qianshan's mind, and they turned into terror. Su Ming. Qianshan instinctively looked towards Su Ming. Just as he was about to warn him, he saw Su Ming lift his head and stare at the long arc charging towards him from the distance. There was aloofness and indifference in his eyes. "Kneel before me and speak," Su Ming said flatly. His voice was like a thunderous roar that spread in all directions. His will echoed behind him, causing the galaxy to distort. Under his deliberate action, it turned into a huge butterfly. This was not the child of Morris Alba borrowing Harmonious Morris Alba's power. It was an illusion Su Ming had created with his own will, but in Harmonious Morris Alba expands cosmos. This scene could shake the souls of all lives. Today is the day when my mom and dad are holding a lot of grudges against me. It's the day when my family gathers together, and my whole family is at my grandmother's house. I'm the only one who can't go, so I have to stay at home and write my story. Usually I wouldn't think much of it, but today is the Mid-Autumn Festival. I might not be able to obtain my family's understanding, but I hope that I can obtain some comfort from them. Tomorrow, I will continue with the 3rd chapter. Chapter 1374. Within Harmonious Morris Alba, expands cosmos, was the child of Morris Alba with his eyes closed, as if he was communicating with Harmonious Morris Alba's will. Su Ming's other self in the expanse cosmos shuddered at that instant. His body was no longer stiff. The shadow of the butterfly in his eyes flashed rapidly, and his breathing clearly quickened. A brilliant light shone in his eyes, along with deep hesitation. He had communicated with Harmonious Morris Albas just now to verify whether his guess was correct. He wanted to use Harmonious Morris Albas' will to deduce what he should do that would bring him the greatest value. But once he communicated with Harmonious Morris Alba, he sank into an even greater state of confusion. The other me, from Arid Triad. Harmonious Morris Albas has clearly expressed a great interest in my other self. After a moment of silence, the killing intent in a young man's eyes clearly increased. It wants me to bring this person to the burial ground of Morris Alba, or devour him and fuse with him so that we can become one. If I can do this, if I can take the initiative, then it will fulfill one of my requests. The young man fell silent again. The hesitation on his face grew, as if he was thinking about what he should do. Not long after, the sound of footsteps came from outside the palace he was in. As the footsteps echoed, the figure of a woman appeared next to the palace door. That woman was very beautiful and had a graceful gentleness about her. She walked into the palace and arrived beside the young man. She quietly squatted down and pressed down on the young man's hand. The young man lifted his head, and they looked at each other. If Su Ming was there, he would definitely be able to recognize the woman at first glance. She was Yu Xian. Perhaps more accurately speaking, she was the other Yu Xian in this world. However, while her body looked normal, in truth, when her hand touched the young man's palm, she felt as if she could pass through it. It was not that the young man was not real, but the Yu Xian in front of him was an illusion. Why did you have to come here? The young man stared at the woman before him. She was his wife, and pity appeared in his eyes. He lifted his left hand as if he wanted to touch the woman's face, but he could only touch air. A hint of pain appeared in his eyes, and he could not help it. Your soul is dissipating. Don't go out at this time. Stay in the profound wood I prepared for you. I promise you that one day, I will definitely make you truly awaken. As the young man mumbled, the hesitation on his face disappeared, and it was replaced by determination and determination. She was his wife, a living dead that he could not make wake up even if he was a child of Morris Alba. Her soul would occasionally separate from her body, and as it swam about, it would scatter. It would then drift away. That was an accident many years ago. As a child of Morris Alba, when he communicated with Harmonious Morris Alba's will, he had suddenly lost his consciousness. When he woke up, he saw his wife. He, Albas would ba, while the young man a world society god, so she fell. Over would Alba world. Even if he could communicate with Harmonious Morris Alba's will, he would still face a backlash. Once it happened, he would lose his consciousness and turn into an aloof murderer. It was the same for all children of Morris Alba. However, he did not expect that his first backlash would come so early. He went mad. He did everything he could to contact Harmonious Morris Alba's will in an attempt to help his lover recover. But Harmonious Morris Alba's will did not reply. Fusing with my other self is a request. A brilliant light shone in the young man's eyes. The woman in front of him bit her lip and shook her head, as if she did not want her lover to make such a choice. I have no other choice. Just now, I saw my other self's actions in True Sky Hill World in Harmonious Morris Alba's will. He is me, and I am him. I can sense his thoughts. He is intentionally luring me there. Actually, even if he didn't lead me there, I would have taken the initiative to find him. This is our destiny. Only one of us can survive. From the moment he stepped into this place, and from the moment I communicated with Harmonious Morris Alba's will, this destiny was already set. If he doesn't die, then I die. The young man was silent for a moment before he gently caressed the illusory woman's face, as if he could touch the real her. After some time, he swung his arm, and the woman's soul turned into a ray of dark light that disappeared from the hall. The young man's figure also disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in a chamber under the hall. It was surrounded by a large number of seals, but they did not cause any damage. Instead, they were isolated from space and separated from the entire expanse cosmos, causing the flow of time in the chamber to be completely different from the world outside. It was practically eternal. There was a huge log in the chamber. The center of the log had been hollowed out, and inside it was a woman in red. She had her eyes closed, and she looked as if she was in deep sleep. The young man appeared beside the log and stared at the woman in a daze. He stared at her eyebrows, her eyes, her nose, and her lips. As he stared at her, grief appeared on his face. The others only knew that the children of Morris Alba were great, but they did not know that as a child of Morris Alba, they had to pay the price of occasionally suffering a backlash. Each backlash would come suddenly, and it would not appear when they communicated with harmonious Morris Alba. They could lose consciousness at any moment, and once they lost consciousness, everything around them would be destroyed when they woke up. A child of Morris Alba could not have family or friends. This was the price they had to pay. That was why he would usually not go out. Instead, he would lock himself in the hall, as if he was half-sealed. Unless he needed to, he would not get up for long periods of time. As he stared at the woman quietly, the young man's expression became even more determined. After some time, he stood up, and a fierce glare shone in his eyes. At that moment, it was as if there was no difference between him and Su Ming. With a swing of his arm, the young man disappeared from the place. When he reappeared, he was already in the palace. When he walked out of the door, his voice echoed in the air. 10 morning deaths. Once he said those words, 10 distorted figures manifested in the air around the young man. Their bodies were indistinct, and the aura of death was thick around them. They were not living people, but dead souls. They had died in the passage of time, but the young man had used the power of harmonious Morris Alba's will to forcefully reverse the passage of time and bring out the 10 souls of the strongest morning deaths over the course of countless years. He had also used harmonious Morris Alba's will to form the 18 spirit hells and give it to the 10 morning deaths, causing them to form a formation with endless killing intent. Follow me, fuse with harmonious Morris Alba's will, and destroy the karma of the world outside. The young man's voice was cold. As he spoke, the shadow of the butterfly in his eyes shone rapidly. The vague shadow of a butterfly also appeared behind him. With a step forward, he charged into space. The 10 morning deaths behind him exuded a ghastly presence. Without a single word, they spread out and moved forward as if they had wings. From the distance, he looked like a real butterfly flapping its wings in space. There were 18 vortices spinning beneath him. They were the mighty pressure formed by the 18 spirit hells. Piercing howls came from the 18 vortices, and they were filled with pain and madness. Wherever he went, all lives would worship him. In True Sky Hill World, Chin Chin stared nervously at the long arc that was swiftly closing in from the distance. He instinctively looked at Su Ming, who was beside him. Harmonious Morris Alba, Expanse Cosmos, is moving. Can you sense it? Su Ming did not seem to be bothered by the rapidly approaching long arc. Instead, he lifted his head and stared at space before suddenly saying those words. What? Chin Chun was stunned. Perhaps it's just a figment of my imagination. Su Ming shook his head. During that instant just now, he had a strange feeling that the entire harmonious Morris Alba Expanse Cosmos was moving. This was a feeling he had never felt before. The only time was when he had obtained a true world's will in this place. The wills of 2 true worlds existed in his mind, and it was as if they had reached a state of balance. Only then did this strange feeling appear. This feeling came too suddenly, and when he searched carefully, he could not find any traces of it. He could only think that it was a figment of his imagination. Booming sounds reverberated in the air. The long arc closed in, and within it was a man dressed in golden armor. He was incredibly big and built, and in his right hand was a golden tower. There was anger on his face, but when he saw Su Ming and the butterfly behind him, that anger turned into shock and disbelief. Child of Morris Alba. The man's footsteps came to a swift halt. When he was about thousands of feet away from Su Ming, his expression changed several times. Lord Child of Morris Alba, why did you destroy my sect? The man in golden armor forced down his anger and enunciated each word clearly. Kneel down and speak. Su Ming's expression was indifferent. He cast the man a cold glance before speaking languidly. The moment he spoke, the universe roared. The butterfly behind Su Ming danced swiftly, and a great will spread out from Su Ming with a bang. The strength of that will shook the sky and earth. It was the supreme will formed when Su Ming's two true worlds fused together. That will was definitely not something a cultivator could hope to fight against. It was a state of being that belonged to a completely different realm. Under the booming sounds and mighty pressure from the will, the man in golden armor shuddered and coughed up a mouthful of blood. Cracking sounds came from his body, as if he could not withstand it. He roared, and the tower in his hand flew up. It swiftly grew as if it wanted to fight against the will, but in just the span of a few breaths, the tower shattered with a bang. When it shattered to pieces, the armor on the man in golden armor shattered, and he coughed up another mouthful of blood. As his body shuddered, he was forced to kneel down. It was as if the entire universe had collapsed and pressed down on his body. With his level of cultivation, it was impossible for him to fight against it, and he could only kneel down. As he knelt, everything went silent, and the pressure of the heavens seemed to solidify in all directions. The light in the eyes of the burly man vanished, and his cultivation base came to a standstill. All of his life force was destroyed as he knelt to the ground. Cracking sounds echoed in the air. As Qian Chen's heart trembled, he saw Li Tianwang, who was as powerful as the might of heaven in his impression, die. His life force, his cultivation base, and his soul had all crumbled at the instant he knelt down and worshipped Su Ming. That one kneel meant death. Do you still have any enemies? Su Ming asked Qian Chun slowly, without even looking at Li Tianwang. It's gone. Qian Chun was completely frightened, and he stammered hurriedly. Chapter 1375. Qian Chen's enemies were gone, but Li Tianwang had died. He was a powerful warrior in Death Realm, and he was famous in True Sky Hill World. His death would definitely not end just like that. The destruction of Li Tianwang's four sects might attract quite a number of people's attention, but there were practically no cultivators who had reached Li Tianwang's level. Only those who were at the same level as the four sects would pay attention to it. That was why it did not matter whether it was the child of Morris Alba, the Jade Emperor, or the other powerful warriors in True Sky Hill World paid no attention to it. However, at the instant Li Tianwang's body and soul were destroyed, there was a huge cultivation planet that shone with a golden light that reached 100,000 feet in True Sky Hill World. It was 10 times bigger than a normal planet. There was no land in the golden planet, only seawater. The color of the seawater was not blue, but golden, which was why the cultivation planet looked golden when viewed from the galaxy. On the Golden Sea was a group of palaces that were practically extravagant. The palace at the center looked like a palace in the mortal world, and there was a big hall there. There was a dragon throne in the hall, and sitting on it was a middle-aged man dressed in a luxurious emperor's robe. He had an awe-inspiring expression on his face, but at that moment he was frowning. There were 3 spirit plates floating in front of him, and one of them had Li Tianwang's name written on it. There were many cracks on it, and not a single hint of intelligence spread out from it. "Since you're here, come in." The man in the emperor's robe lifted his head and cast a glance at the area outside the hall. His voice was gentle, but there was a supreme, awe-inspiring tone to it. When his voice echoed in the air, 2 figures walked into the hall that looked like a palace. One of them was a boy dressed in red. His eyes were cold and dark. When he took a step forward, he walked in. By his side was a young man dressed in blue robes. He was tall and slender, and he was incredibly handsome. There was a third eye at the center of his brows, just like Su Ming's. "Greetings, Jade Emperor." The young man wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed slightly before speaking slowly. As for the boy beside him, his expression was dark, but he did not speak. These 2 people were naturally the young Feng Hua and the God of 2 Tunnels, who were as famous as Li Tianwang in True Sky Hill World's Jade Palace. They were both powerful warriors who had perfected Death Realm. The middle-aged man sitting on the dragon throne was the strongest person in True World's Jade Palace. He was second only to the child of Morris Alba, the Jade Emperor. Li Tianwang has died. The Jade Emperor looked at Heavenly King Li's memorial tablet and sighed. He gripped the armrest of his throne tightly with his right hand. He was furious. The Jade Palace is not as glorious as it once was. In this generation, only a few of us can obtain the inheritance and continue to exist. Now that Heavenly King Li has fallen, I wonder what the Jade Emperor plans to do, the blue-robed young man said calmly. What else can we do? Even though the person who killed Heavenly King Li has an extraordinary cultivation, wouldn't our Jade Palace become a laughingstock if we let him escape unscathed? This person must die. Tianwang's was King's Phone Wang, will. Tianwang's brothers. You should also know that this person's cultivation is extraordinary. Since he was able to kill Heavenly King Li, it is not impossible for him to kill the two of us. Now that Heavenly King Li is dead, why must you do this? The blue-clothed young man frowned. However, before he could finish speaking, he was immediately interrupted by the boy's sharp voice. The two of us aren't his opponent. What about the Jade Emperor? Even the Jade Emperor isn't his opponent. There's still the child of Morris Alba. No matter what, this person must die. If he doesn't die, I will leave Jade Palace. There's no point in keeping a Jade Palace that can't fight back even if it's killed. The boy's voice echoed in the hall, causing a freezing glare to appear in the Jade Emperor's eyes. He stared coldly at the boy. After a long time, he slowly stood up. Say it again for this empress to hear. The little boy Feng Hua was silent. He lowered his head and did not say anything. The Jade Emperor snorted coldly and took a step forward. Li Tianwang's death will not catch the child of Morris Alba's attention, and it's impossible for him to take action. He will only appear when Jade Palace's survival is at stake. Since this person has offended Jade Palace, then no matter what price we have to pay, he must die. Where are the 5 great generals? When the Jade Emperor said those words, a loud bang immediately came from the golden ocean beyond the palace. As it reverberated in the air, 5 mountains shot out from the bottom of the ocean and charged into the clouds. They were 5 towering mountains. At the instant they appeared, they exploded with a bang, revealing 5 giants that were thousands of feet tall. The 5 giants were dressed in armor, and they knelt on the surface of the ocean while facing the hall. 5 generals, hear me. I order the 5 of you to lead 100,000 Jade Palace heavenly soldiers and set up the 5-direction rune. With the young Feng Hua as the commander, kill the enemies outside. Once an awe-inspiring voice came from the palace, the 5 giants lifted their heads and answered together. At the same time, the 5 people moved and flew out of the golden ocean. Immediately after, the ocean roared. As huge waves tumbled about, 100,000 people dressed in armor flew up from the ocean where the 5 people came from. They formed 500,000 heavenly soldiers and charged into the sky. A long arc also rushed out from the palace. It was the young Feng Hua. Once he appeared, a wheel immediately spun under his feet and swept up his body. In an instant, he caught up to the 5 generals and took the lead to charge into the sky. Where are the 3 sieves? As the Jade Emperor's voice echoed in the air again, the ocean in the entire cultivation planet sank by hundreds of feet. 3 long golden dragons roared from 3 different directions on the planet. When they echoed in the world, their roars filled the universe. I order you, the 3 sieve dragons, to cast the art of overturning rain and clouds and seal the 2 spaces. Use the art of bean soldiers to gather 300,000 heavenly soldiers. With the god of 2 tunnels as the leader, kill the enemies outside. Their roars shook the heavens. As the god of 2 tunnels flew out with a sigh, the 3 long golden dragons roared and moved. Immediately, countless scales on their bodies reflected an endless amount of golden light. That golden light instantly turned into 300,000 humanoid beasts with dragon heads. They were dressed in armor and charged into the air with the 3 golden dragons and the god of 2 tunnels, seal the 5 directions and the 2 spaces of time. With the power of the 2 fiends to kill each other, it's time for me to attack. The golden ocean will form. When the voice from the palace in the sky spoke again, the golden ocean on the cultivation planet rumbled and trembled before it rose from the ground and charged into the sky like rain falling backwards. At the instant the golden seawater rushed into the sky, a person walked out of the palace. He was dressed in an emperor's robe, and it was naturally the Jade Emperor. When he walked out, all the golden seawater surrounded him. It gathered together, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge statue. It was the statue of the Jade Emperor. It shone with golden light and was 10,000 feet tall. It looked like it was filled with a power that could shake the sky and earth. The moment it appeared, it caused True Sky Hill World to tremble. It was as if this person's existence had already reached a critical point that True Sky Hill World could withstand. An ancient presence filled the air, causing the statue to look like an ancient statue that had existed for an unknown number of years. As it moved, the ancient golden statue instantly cut through space and took huge strides towards the sky. They might not have sent out all their forces, but even the Jade Emperor had personally joined the battle, which was a telling sign of Jade Palace's killing intent and determination. Su Ming sat in space in True Sky Hill World. This was the place where Li Tianwang had died. At that moment, his corpse was not too far away, and he still remained kneeling. They should be here soon. Qianshun, you can leave on your own. What happens next has nothing to do with you. If you stay here, you'll be in danger. If we are fated, we will naturally meet again, Su Ming said faintly and looked at Qianshun. Qianshun fell silent. He could vaguely guess what Su Ming was waiting for, and with a slightly pale face, he bowed quietly towards him. Take care. Qianshun knew that not only would he be of no use if he stayed, he would even bring great trouble to himself. He had always been a decisive person. At that moment, he bowed to Su Ming and turned into a long arc that charged in another direction. As he watched Qianshun's back, Su Ming turned his head around and waited quietly. He was waiting for his other self to come and for the person who would take revenge for Li Tianwang's death. No matter who it was on that day, the universe would be dyed in blood. Time trickled by. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed, and golden light shone in the distance. When golden ripples spread out, Su Ming did not wait for his other self. Instead, he waited for Jade Palace, who would take revenge for Li Tianwang. Su Ming cast a glance at the golden light in the distance and mumbled to himself faintly, since they're asking for death, I'll fulfill Jade Palace's wish. When harmonious Morris Alba Expanse Cosmos was in a state of mutual hostility, the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe threw his head back and laughed in the vortex, known as Bright Yang in this Expanse Cosmos, and Een Death in Arid Triad. His aura was in a mess, and he looked incredibly pathetic. In fact, his life force had become incredibly weak. But he was still smiling. The fifth tribulation, the withering earth 5 evils. His blood became a river, his body became the earth, his fingers became mountains, his limbs became mountains, his eyes became the sun and moon, and all the hair on his body became the living beings of the world. Everything about him was separated. This was the 5th disaster, but he had forcefully broken it. What followed was the 6th disaster, the slaughter of emptiness that would appear between night and day. If Su Ming ran into this disaster, he would definitely die. Even the current Su Ming would definitely die. The old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe still managed to get through this disaster, but he paid an incredibly great price. But he still laughed and went to face the final disaster, the heavenly disaster. If I get through this disaster, I will be able to have my spirit ascend 9 times and become an ancestral spirit. You, slumbering arid triads will, I will challenge you. As the old man from Heavenly Spirit Tribe laughed, he charged into the vortex above him. With determination, madness, and an indomitable spirit, he charged into the vortex, where the final tribulation was gathering. the heavenly tribulation. The old man from heavenly spirit tribe disappeared into the vortex above him. Only then did time slow down. No one knew how much time had passed before an anguished sigh echoed in the air. The old man's face appeared in the vortex, and there was a dazed look on his face, as if he had seen something unbelievable. Chapter 1376. Su Ming, it came. It is moving. My guess was correct, but it was also wrong. I died a worthy death, because even if I died, I learned of the final secret of arid triad and harmonious Morris alba. So that's how it is. As the old man from heavenly spirit tribe screamed in madness, his face crumbled with a bang. His will of an antecedental spirit spilled out like blood, and a drop of it charged into Een death vortex. Behind it was a red bolt of lightning that chased after it and disappeared into the vortex as well. The disaster had ended. Su Ming could not see this, and neither could he know what the old man from heavenly spirit tribe had seen during the final heavenly disaster. He could not understand why he was a loss, why he had gone mad, and why he said that his guess was correct but also wrong. Su Ming did not know any of this. If the drop of blood formed by the will of the old man from heavenly spirit tribe had not been wiped off by the red bolt of lightning, perhaps Su Ming would have been able to gain some epiphanies once he obtained it. Almost at the instant the antecedental spirit's disaster and Een death vortex disappeared, arid triad expanse cosmos, which had been eternally imprisoned, instantly returned to normal. To all the people, the period of silence during that period of time was like the instant they closed their eyes. They did not notice it, and neither could they notice it. They did not know how many moments and how many years had passed during the instant they closed their eyes. It was as if that period of time had been wiped off without a single sound, making it difficult for them to know. Everything returned to normal. Perhaps besides Su Ming, the only people who appeared were the cultivators from St. D Fire and Dark Dawn who had stopped entering arid triad expanse cosmos gap due to the antecedental spirit's disaster. Once arid triad's disaster returned to normal, the cultivators from St. D Fire and Dark Dawn turned into long arcs and stirred up loud bangs that shook the sky and earth as they surged into arid triad's gap in large numbers. The second arid triad's disaster arrived. The first was Su Ming's antecedental spirit's disaster, and the second was the invasion disaster from St. D Fire and Dark Dawn. The cultivators from Dark Dawn and St. D Fire had been waiting for this day for a long, long time. To them, it was the day they dreamed of returning. Ancient Wu and Ancient Shu had been gone for tens of thousands of years, but now they had finally returned on a large scale. When the cultivators from Dark Dawn and St. D Fire descended, they stirred up loud booms in all of Arid Triad. The bodies of the cultivators from Ninth Summit who were guarding the whirlwind instantly crumbled, but before they died, they still managed to send a message. The cultivators from the three great true worlds who were stationed outside the gap to fight against this group of descenders would be the ones who would fight against them. Their mission was to stall for as long as possible, even if they died. A fierce battle broke out almost at the instant St. D Fire and Dark Dawn descended. Arid Triad's peace was immediately broken. The disaster that would sweep through all of Arid Triad showed its ferociousness. Compared to True Sacred Een World and the Fourth True World, True Morning Tao World's Ninth Summit was clearly much more prepared. It did not matter whether it was the entire True World existing based on Su Ming's will, or the fact that Morning Tao sect was originally easy to defend and difficult to attack. Ninth Summit had a certain advantage. The rune had been activated. Huzi's preparations over the years had caused the defenses of the rune to be several times stronger than before. Most of the 100-something relocation runes were instantly shut down, but Ninth Summit did not show a single hint of panic. All of this had been rehearsed several times under Second Senior Brother's lead. Perhaps when they went out, they would not be St. D Fire and Dark Dawn's opponents, but when they sealed themselves up and carried out self-defense, the entire True Worlds would surround them, and St. D Fire and Dark Dawn would definitely not be able to break through them within a short period of time. unless a powerful warrior in Avicania realm personally attacked. But in the early stages of the war, the possibility of that happening was not great. When Arid Triad used true Morning Dao world as their battlefield and engaged in the first large-scale battle against the world beyond, a battle also happened in Harmonious Morris Alba, Expanse Cosmos, and True Sky Hill world. Perhaps it was because of the mirror's positive and negative connection. Su Ming sat in the air and stared at the ripples of golden light spreading out in the distance. They had locked down the area and were pushing towards him in a large area. For figures that were like small hills were roaring as they took a step forward. There were 500,000 cultivators in the area, and all of them were dressed in armor. Su Ming knew that they were the Jade Palace's heavenly soldiers that Qian Shun had mentioned before. Piling up with human lives? Su Ming's expression was aloof. When he lifted his right hand, he swung it forward. The universe immediately shuddered. Before the 100,000 heavenly soldiers who were charging towards him could even get close, the space in front of them looked as if it had been lifted up. It turned into an invisible wave that swept up the 100,000 heavenly soldiers. Once they were wrapped up, Su Ming clenched his right fist, and with a bang, the 100,000 heavenly soldiers shuddered at the same time. Then, with a loud bang, they shattered. The difference in their levels of cultivation and the difference in their states of life made Su Ming's existence feel like the universe to the heavenly soldiers, and they were just ants under it. Almost at the instant the booming sounds rang out, the sky above Su Ming looked as if it had been torn apart by someone. A large amount of golden light scattered down from within, and 3 golden dragons appeared. Once they appeared, they charged towards Su Ming while roaring. There were 300,000 cultivators in golden armor around them with stern expressions on their faces. At the instant all of them appeared and the 3 golden dragons roared, the space around Su Ming froze. Soon after, even time showed signs of freezing. It was as if the small region where Su Ming was had been separated from True Sky Hill world. The flow of time in that region was completely different from the world outside. It sank into a state that was practically frozen for eternity. At that moment, a piercing howl came from the distance. In the light of wind and fire was a boy dressed in red. In his hand was a long spear of 30 feet. The wheel under his feet spun, stirring up a violent gust of wind in a sea of fire. He was so fast that he instantly closed in on Su Ming, and his spear went straight for the center of his brows. The boy's cultivation base was great completion in Death Realm. When he appeared, his power shook the sky and earth. During that instant, when the 3 golden dragons roared above Su Ming, a young man in blue robes had his robes turn into armor. He held the heavenly halberd in his hand, and when he swung it, crimson clouds filled the area under his feet. The third eye at the center of his brows opened completely, and a strange and enchanting light shone in it. At the same time, he turned into an indescribably sharp presence and closed in on Su Ming. At the same time, the space in front of Su Ming let out a bang, and a gigantic ancient golden statue that was 10,000 feet tall appeared. It shone with a golden light that reached 100,000 feet. Once it appeared, it enveloped the entire galaxy in gold. Mumbling sounds that sounded like chants tumbled out of its mouth. It lifted its right hand, and like a mighty wall, it charged towards Su Ming. When a statue appeared, the galaxy looked as if it was about to crumble, as if it could not withstand the mighty pressure from the statue. Its level of cultivation had also surpassed Death Realm. To Su Ming, it was equivalent to someone who had gone through 2 spirit ascensions. Jade Palace, immortals, get rid of evil and protect the Tao. Golden light shone on the 3 worlds. Chapter 1377. In the past, Su Ming, I succeeded in my Berserker's awakening. Haha, I can practice the ways of the Berserker now. I'll be a Berserker from now on. How is it? Am I awesome? In the past, Su Ming, don't worry. If anyone dares to bully you, I'll beat them up for you. In the past, haha, I, Lei Chun, will become the tribe leader in the future. Su Ming, You have to work hard. You have to become the elder. Then Dark Mountain Tribe will belong to us. Bei Ling is horrible. Su Ming, should we find a chance to beat him up tonight? But I don't think I can beat him. Su Ming, I think I fell in love with someone. It's that really strong girl from White Spirit Tribe. I think she really fits my taste. Su Ming, are you listening? Su Ming, I'm tired. Don't walk so fast. Let me tell you, did you know that when you went to gather herbs, the house of the person next door caught on fire? Are you listening? I'm telling you. In the past, Su Ming, I'm not going back to the tribe. I'm going to the other side of the mountain. There are fallen berserkers there. I have to make myself stronger. I have to become stronger, even if I have to pay a great price. The voice from the passage of time appeared in Su Ming's head at that moment. He looked at the black butterfly and fell silent. Will we change? In the midst of the complicated emotions in Su Ming's heart, he stared at the black butterfly in a daze. He had found his old friend in harmonious Morris Alba, but he could not find any traces of him in Arid Triad. He was Su Ming's childhood friend, and it could be said that he was Su Ming's first true friend in his life. He was the friend who liked to nag, but swore that he would protect him in the future. He was the friend who had always had the goal of becoming the tribe leader as his goal. He was the childhood friend who cherished their friendship and grew up together. But he wasn't him. In Dark Mountain, the most unforgettable family member was Grandpa, the most unforgettable love was Bai Ling, and the most unforgettable friendship was Lei Chun. More than 1,000 years had passed. With the passage of time, they could no longer return to the past. Their companions from back then had already grown to become strangers. However, the memories in their hearts were still buried there. They were unwilling to forget, unwilling to give up. They would always find them in silence, but there were only traces, only traces. Along with the marks were a few glowing spots of memories. One of them recorded the shrill and pained roar from the chains of Han Mountain in Han Mountain City. And that sentence, "You're not him. You can't be him. I buried you with my own hands. This is impossible." There was also a spot of light in which the Ghost Keeper tribe's great elder was looking for the next Ghost Keeper under him. It became a spot in that memory that would flicker eternally. Su Ming continued until the final point. It was the scene from The Secrets of the Universe when he was in the rune burning, incense burning. He saw Su Ming die with regret on his face. Silence. It was as if beside silence, Su Ming did not know how else to express the complicated feelings and anguish in his heart. All of this seemed to have verified the conversation between two children as they ran on the snow at the foot of Dark Mountain around 1,000 years ago. Will we change? This topic was too heavy for the two children at that time, so heavy that they would only occasionally think about it. Even if they did think about it, they would only think about it faintly because they did not understand the future. They did not understand that the two paths in the fog before them would cross each other's paths a few times in their lives. When they crossed each other's paths, would they run side by side, or would they go their separate ways? I don't want to be your enemy. Your enemy is not me. He's already on his way. Su Ming was silent, and the black butterfly was also silent. After a long while, a voice filled with complicated feelings came from the butterfly. Perhaps as the child of Morris Alba of this expanse cosmos, he knew more than others. He knew about Arid Triad's existence, and that there was another version of himself there. Perhaps that other version of himself had changed in an unseen manner. He had memories of Su Ming that no one else knew about. In any case, Su Ming could sense the complexity in his business, and he did not try to hide it. In silence, the butterfly flapped its wings and swept up the Jade Emperor, leaving into the distance Lei Chun. Su Ming mumbled. The butterfly in the distance did not stop. Gradually, it looked as if it was about to disappear into space. Lei Chun. Su Ming lifted his head swiftly, and his voice echoed in the air like thunder. He called out the name of his childhood friend and spoke of his most unforgettable friendship in Dark Mountain. Just as the black butterfly was about to fuse into space, it came to a swift halt. You asked me in the past whether we will change, and my answer was no. You didn't answer me at that time. Now, can you tell me your answer? Su Ming stared at the butterfly. It was his friendship, the first friend he had in his life. The black butterfly did not speak for a long time. About a dozen breaths passed, but he still did not speak. Instead, he fused into space and disappeared without a trace. Su Ming lowered his head, and a hint of sadness appeared on his face. He knew that the other party was not him, but he still asked because he cared about Lei Chun, who he had never been able to find. He cared about his childhood friend. This was friendship. It was different from familial love, because if there was one type of love in the world that would never change, then it would definitely be familial love. That was why friendship was not as pure as familial love, but at certain times, it could be the same as familial love. Friendship was different from love. It did not need to be there every single day, but when a person needed it, the existence of friendship could make a person feel that their life was more than enough compared to love. Friendship was the person who would play in the mud with you, run together, play together, watch the sun rise and set with you when you were unhappy. It was the person who would nag at you in hopes that you would be happy. It was the person who could punch your chest and laugh as you hugged him. It was the person who was worth remembering for the rest of your life. This was friendship. As time passed by, it would become more stable, and in their later years, there would be companions who would say the arrogant things they had said when they were young and even boast together. Su Ming lifted his head quietly and looked at space. After a long while, he sighed softly. He still avoided looking at Lei Chen's deeply remorseful gaze when he saw him in the secrets of the universe. He did not want to think about it too much. In fact, he did not even want to think about the reason behind it. It was just like how he did not want to think about Su Xian, even though he had already guessed it, and just like how he did not want to face Bai Ling's change in emotions. Su Ming valued his emotions. He could overturn the world for his emotions. He could wipe off a true world for his old friend, Qian Chen. He was not a good person, and neither was he a person who walked down the righteous path. Sometimes he was like a despicable person, and sometimes he was too cunning, but he could give up everything for his emotions. As Su Ming's enemies, they had to face death, and as his friends, Su Ming was a person who could make others turn their backs to him. He was a person they could trust. Familial love, friendship, and love. These were the three emotions in life, and Su Ming cherished each of them with his life. Su Ming was silent. He sat in the empty galaxy and closed his eyes. No one could see or sense the loneliness in his heart, because they could only see his cold-bloodedness and his desire to kill. That cold-bloodedness and desire to kill hid away Su Ming's care and determination towards love in his heart. Time passed. When an unknown amount of time went by, Su Ming lifted his head and saw the person he had been waiting for so long in the galaxy in the distance. The purple butterfly was endless. The 10 great mournful death souls spread out like wings, serving as a foil to the young man in front of him, along with the determination and killing intent in his eyes. This was the moment of destiny. When you know who you are no longer you, but when you don't know who you are, you will only be you. As Su Ming mumbled, he forced down the anguish in his heart and ignited the flames of war in his eyes. He met the gaze of his other self who had arrived through the galaxy. At that moment, the black butterfly swept up the Jade Emperor in True Sky Hill World and appeared on a meteor that was not too far away from the gigantic golden planet. The meteor floated in space and rotated according to a certain trajectory. There was a very normal-looking house on it. The black butterfly disappeared and turned into a man in a black robe. His face could not be seen clearly, but he was very big and built. He stood quietly and lifted his head to stare at space. He did not say a single word. Behind him, the Jade Emperor wiped off the blood at the corners of his mouth and stood by the side. After a long while, the Jade Emperor hesitated for a moment before he asked softly, "Lord Child of Morris Alba, he is not the child of Morris Alba from True Victory Village World. Who is he?" After some time, the black-robed child of Morris Alba mumbled hoarsely, "He is an old friend. More accurately speaking, he was once an old friend of my other self." The Jade Emperor looked as if he wanted to say something, but he hesitated for a moment and did not speak. It's not that I don't want to help you, but this person is not someone I can attack, because the only person who has the right to attack him is him, who is already in Victory Village. Go back and train at ease. I will help you make up for the losses suffered by Jade Palace." The black-robed child of Morris Alba shook his head. As he spoke faintly, he turned around and walked into the house. The Jade Emperor bowed quietly by the side. There was a slightly complicated look on his face, along with the fear that came from surviving a disaster. Once the child of Morris Alba from True Sky Hill World returned to the house, he chose to leave. In the house, the child of Morris Alba removed the hood that covered his head to reveal the face of a middle-aged man. There was an ancient air to his face, and compared to the Lei Chun and Su Ming's memories, there were quite a lot more signs of age on him, but Su Ming could still tell that he was Lei Chun. He quietly sat down cross-legged, and a complicated look appeared on his face. He sighed softly, and a hint of regret appeared on his face. If Su Ming was here and could see that regret, then he would definitely be able to immediately recognize that the Lei Chun he saw in the secrets of the universe was this person. "Father, Su Ming came here." Lei Chun lifted his right hand quietly and seized the air. Immediately, a jade slip with black and white intersecting with each other appeared in his hand. It was as if yin and yang had fused together perfectly to form a voice transmission jade slip that could connect harmonious Morris Alba and Arid Triad. As he stared at the jade slip quietly, a hint of conflict appeared on Lei Chen's face. In the end, it turned into resolution. He did not send a voice transmission, but put away the jade slip. "Will we change?" Lei Chun mumbled, and a dazed look appeared on his face. "It has been going on for many days. Allow me to rest for a while. On the third day, it will be a little later. Everyone, please feel heartache for me. I might not be old, but I'm still old." Chapter 1378. It did not matter whether it was the young Feng Hua or the god of two tunnels. They could naturally tell at first glance that Su Ming was the child of Morris Alba. The appearances of the three children of Morris Alba were not a secret in harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos. However, even if they recognized him, they still attacked to kill him because they did not receive permission from True Sky Hill World's child of Morris Alba. Since the child of Morris Alba did not refuse their permission, they could attack without hesitation, and they believed that once danger arrived, the child of Morris Alba would definitely descend and intervene. And once they saw Su Ming's face clearly and saw the illusory butterfly behind him, they were already prepared that it would be difficult for them to kill him on that day. They wanted to intimidate and counterattack. They wanted to let everyone know that even if the child of Morris Alba wanted to wipe off the members of Jade Palace for no reason, they would not submit to him. Instead, they would have to suffer the backlash. With the Jade Emperor as the center, the god of two tunnels, and the young Feng Hua as support, the three powerful warriors of Jade Palace used the five-direction rune to seal the sky and the three-sieve dragon prison to form a monstrous killing rune. It could be said that the rune had gathered all the best power in a true world, and it could be said that they had sent all their forces to attack a single person. It was especially so for the Jade Emperor. He might not be an antecedental spirit, but he was equivalent to those who had gone through their first or second spirit ascension. He was just one step away from reaching Avacania realm. When a person in this realm gathered all the power in Jade Palace, his killing intent could shake the universe. If Su Ming had not possessed true Morning Dao world, he would have definitely died if he ran into this encirclement. Even if he had the god of Berserker's transformation, it would have been difficult for him to survive. After all, this was a killing trap that gathered most of the power in a true world. Once he possessed true Morning Dao world, Su Ming obtained his true world clone, and his level of cultivation could no longer be calculated in terms of one spirit ascension. By turning his will of an antecedental spirit into the will of heaven and using the will of a true world to drive the antecedental spirits, Su Ming could be said to have surpassed the limits of a cultivator and reached a state equivalent to that of a ruler. At that moment, if Su Ming had faced the killing trap before him, He would have been invincible, but if he wanted to fight back, he would have to pay a price. But when he stepped into harmonious Morris Alba expanse, he was completely different from before. He had obtained the will of another true world, and his will had increased by one-fold. His will had increased by one-fold. The mighty pressure formed by the wills of two true worlds made him surpass all cultivators. His state of life was only second to those of Eritread. Unless he ran into multiple cultivators in Avicania realm attacking him at the same time, it would be very difficult for him to run into any enemies. Even the current situation did not pique Su Ming's interest. He stared at the young Feng Hua and the god of two tunnels charging towards him from his left and right, as well as the palm from the 10,000 feet tall ancient golden statue that had appeared right in front of him. His expression remained as calm as water. You overestimate yourself. As Su Ming spoke faintly, his will spread out. The butterfly behind him became indistinct at that instant. When it spread out, it increased in size by 100 times or even 1,000 times. In an instant, it covered most of the galaxy. There were nearly 1,000,000 heavenly soldiers in this area. There were 3 powerful cultivators, 3 Luo dragons, and 4 generals. The moment the illusory butterfly covered the area, time seemed to freeze. However, it only froze for the others. It did not affect Su Ming. He took a step to the left and lifted his right hand to seize the long spear in the young Feng Hua's hand. At the instant he touched it, booming sounds reverberated in space. The long spear shattered inch by inch, and shock gradually appeared on the young Feng Hua's face. At that moment, Su Ming tapped the center of the young Feng Hua's brow with his right finger. Booming sounds surged into the sky again. The young Feng Hua shuddered. At that moment, Su Ming had already turned around. When he lifted his head, a brilliant light shone in his eyes, and the third eye at the center of his brow opened to look at the god of two tunnels. In Su Ming's third eye, the god of two tunnels' body was magnified endlessly until it saw through his robes, flesh, and blood. He saw the god of two tunnels' soul and the legacy contained in his blood. When Su Ming closed his third eye, a will that the god of two tunnels could not fight against descended on him. As a loud bang echoed in space, the god of two tunnels shuddered violently, and blood flowed out of his body. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Su Ming averted his gaze. He lifted his left hand and pointed towards the incoming palm of the ancient statue. The instant they touched, the ancient statue's palm shuddered and shattered inch by inch, turning into an endless amount of shards that tumbled backwards. All lives perish. Su Ming pulled his left hand back and swung it casually. Immediately, the illusory butterfly that covered a small part of the galaxy flapped its wings lightly. With it, countless ripples instantly spread out in the galaxy. Wherever they went, the 4,000 feet tall giants shuddered. Their flesh and blood turned into a bloody mess, as if it was very difficult for them to keep their physical bodies in one piece. The 400,000 heavenly soldiers behind them also shuddered at the same time as the ripples spread out. Blood flowed out of their eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. The 3 seas above them let out shrill roars that seemed to have been stretched out several times. Their bodies swelled up, and it looked like they were about to explode at any moment. Even the 300,000 followers behind them were affected by the ripples, and pain slowly appeared on their faces. This was not a stillness. The flow of time had instantly slowed down. Only Su Ming remained as calm as ever. At that moment, he finished saying the words, "All lives perish." It was also at that moment that an astonishing will appeared in the distance of the galaxy. It was swiftly descending. Based on Su Ming's senses, he could tell that it was a butterfly, but it was completely different from the butterfly formed by Su Ming's will. Instead, it was a butterfly that came from the same source as harmonious Morris Alba expanse cosmos. Fellow Taoists, do not kill me. At the instant the butterfly appeared, a dark voice forcefully pierced through the galaxy that had slowed down and reached Su Ming's heart. It was True Sky Hill World's child of Morris Alba, but it was still too late. The moment it echoed in space, the galaxy around Su Ming instantly returned to normal, and shrill, piercing screams of pain and booming sounds rose up like a violent storm. They grew stronger with each passing moment, and in just an instant, they looked as if they were about to stir up a storm that would sweep through True Sky Hill world. In the midst of the booming sounds, the four huge bodies of the four generals exploded. Blood and flesh spilled everywhere. Once their bodies and souls were destroyed, the armor of the 400,000 heavenly soldiers following them shattered. Their physical bodies were instantly reduced to powder. No blood could be seen, and neither could their severed limbs be seen. All of them turned into nothingness. Soon after, the shrill roars of the three sieves above were no longer drawn out. Instead, they became piercing. As they roared, the three golden dragons exploded, turning into golden blood that spilled everywhere. The 300,000 followers formed by their scales shuddered and were reduced to nothing. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Soon after, the long spear of the young Feng Hua by Su Ming's side shattered completely. His body shattered, and a mouthful of blood that he did not manage to cough up in time gushed out from his shattered body. As his body tumbled backwards, shock and disbelief appeared on his face. That expression became the final mark of the young Feng Hua in the world. With a loud bang, his body shattered, blood gushed out of the god of two tunnels' mouth. As his body shuddered, he swiftly retreated, but he only took 3 steps back before his third eye exploded. His body might have seemed normal, but the legacy of his blood, his soul, and all his flesh and blood were reduced to powder at that instant. Only his outward appearance remained the same. Su Ming's eyes went wide, and his calm expression became the final scene in the God of Two Tunnels' memories. It's like throwing an egg against a rock. This was the anguish and understanding that appeared in the God of Two Tunnels' mind before it was reduced to powder and disappeared. The last to be destroyed was the 10,000 feet tall, ancient golden statue of the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor's palm was torn to shreds, and countless golden shards tumbled backwards to crash into his body. As his entire body trembled and roared, it shattered and tumbled backwards. The golden shards instantly turned into golden seawater. At the same time, when the ancient golden statue shattered, a roar that seemed to be filled with extreme difficulty came from the ancient statue's body, as if it was coming from the gaps between its teeth. When the ancient statue shattered completely, the Jade Emperor was revealed. He coughed up 7 mouthfuls of blood in succession, and with each mouthful of blood, he took 3 steps back. After taking 21 steps, the Jade Emperor's face turned pale. When he lifted his head, extreme shock and terror appeared on his face, and he stared at the area around him. The area around him was empty. The 800,000 heavenly soldiers were all buried in space. The God of Two Tunnels died, the young Feng Hua died, the 5 generals died, and the 3 sieves died. When the Jade Emperor's gaze landed on Su Ming, he suddenly threw his head back and laughed. His laughter was incredibly forlorn and shrill. Su Ming did not speak. He calmly stared at the Jade Emperor, who was laughing forlornly in front of him. His expression was calm. Since these people had come to this place, then their fates were sealed. As the Jade Emperor laughed, a sigh traveled forth languidly. The butterfly in the distance shone and closed in on the place, enveloping the Jade Emperor in the illusion of the butterfly. It was a black butterfly, and it seemed to be looking at Su Ming through the galaxy that was not too far away from them. Fellow Taoist who is not from this expanse cosmos, I don't want to be your enemy. I will take this person away. There was a hint of age in the voice, along with a complicated emotion that Su Ming could sense. It echoed in the galaxy. Su Ming stared at the butterfly, and a solemn look gradually appeared in his eyes. There was something familiar about the butterfly, and it existed in the depths of Su Ming's memories. It was a remnant from a long, long time ago. The solemn look in Su Ming's eyes eventually turned into a complicated one. It was just like the complicated emotions contained in the voice's words. Perhaps it could be said that it was a complicated feeling from 2 people. Su Ming, People change. As we grow up and experience more things, we will change. Perhaps one day, I will change as well. I think you will as well. Su Ming, will we change when we grow up? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.